This is Kincade Salciunas, 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Well, we got a very interesting article yesterday from Todd Zalecki of MLB.com detailing the thoughts of one John Middleton, the Phillies owner, on this stretch that his baseball team's been in. When the owner talks, well, we got to listen. Also, is the Eagles' offense going to have to carry the defense this year? We asked them to last year, and it didn't exactly work out. Should we be concerned? We're going to break it all down today. Kincade Salciunas, 97.5 The Fanatic.
This is Kincade Salciunas.
I believe it would be a failure for the Philadelphia Eagles, the 2024 Philadelphia Eagles, if they do not win the NFC East. The Eagles have had a quiet training camp.
And to me, I look at it and say, it's wonderful to have peace and serenity out in South Philly.
Kincade Salciunas. John Kincade, Andrew Salciunas.
97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
And a happy Tuesday morning to everybody out there across the Delaware Valley. I'm Connor Thomas, again sitting in for Andrew Salciunas, enjoying his final day of vacation. He will be back tomorrow. To my left, John Kincade. As always, good morning, Johnny.
Good morning there. You sound like the summer cold has taken hold.
Doesn't sound too bad. I'm trying to fight through it a little bit.
Gunner, summer cold has taken hold.
Stay in that room.
Yes. Well, I'm worried. I said I head to the beach this weekend.
You got the vacation coming up.
It's not a cold. It's because I've had to yell at a bunch of people about Bryce Harper pinch hitting or not pinch hitting, and John Middleton's comments and everything going on with the Phillies. It was a good thing we agreed on the Eagles yesterday, Johnny. It saved a bit of this voice for today.
It did. I tell you, just scanning MLB Network yesterday, a little of ESPN coverage, then listening to the show, I heard Mike Missanelli's viewpoint on the way home yesterday, and I would say, just in summary of that, if you're on the side of Topper did the right thing, you were absolutely ratioed by almost every single credible voice in baseball. That people will, I don't understand the blind defense of anybody. It's okay to say, look, sometimes we walk out after a show or we'll walk out after a segment and go, okay, that was crappy. It's okay. It's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to make a bad decision. And it's okay to be called out for it. I was surprised because I just across baseball, I don't know how he would do that. But it made for great conversation yesterday.
It definitely did.
Great conversation.
And I don't know that I would consider what I was saying yesterday a blind defense.
I don't think you had a blind defense. I don't at all. I thought you were pretty rational with your. I'm more talking to people who were just Topper's right. He knows what he's doing. You don't understand. There's no way you want to risk injury for Bryce Harper. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
Right. And I totally understand why people were upset. And I acknowledge that it was probably the wrong it was definitely the wrong decision if you were trying to win that baseball game.
Correct.
And my only argument is that I trust Rob Thompson's overall philosophy because of his track record. And sometimes the greater philosophy will lead to individual poor decisions. If you end up on the plus side at the end of the day, or in this case, at the end of the season, that is what matters more to me. And I think that that's a rational way to approach it. But, Johnny, I don't know that the guy that sits in the owner's office for the Philadelphia Phillies would agree with the way that I view that.
Let his words speak. And if anybody, and I mean it, and I'm serious, if anybody tries to spin this to me when you hear his words as, oh, it's not what you're meaning, what you think it is, it damn well is what you think it is. Connor? What did he have to say?
Well, yesterday, there was an article posted on MLB.com by Todd Zalecki. And we're going to hear some words from Todd Zalecki, who joined Kevin Cooney on Philly Sports Tonight last night on these very airwaves. Great job by Kevin Cooney doing that.
There, Kevin.
But it was an article detailing the thoughts of Phillies owner John Middleton on this stretch that the Phils have been in, this bad pace of play by a team that was playing such good baseball. And it's rare that we hear from John Middleton.
Very rare.
And even rarer, actually, that we hear from John Middleton criticizing the team, especially over these past 2 years.
I think that's fair. He's an extremely positive owner.
He is.
And honestly, though, he's had a lot of positivity to talk about.
100%. But when you see this stretch, it weighs on everybody, including the guy at the top of the operation. This was the most telling excerpt, and we're going to read a couple excerpts from this article throughout today's show. But in quotes, John Middleton saying, I don't think you can just sit there and say, oh, well, this has happened, and therefore we'll turn it around. I don't think you can be that passive, talking about the Phillies' poor stretch of play. I think you have to be pushing, and pushing people to rethink what they've been doing. That's coaches, and that's players. Everybody has to step back and say, what are we doing wrong? Why is a team that was winning at a 700 clip for 3.5 months now playing at a 325 clip for the last 5 weeks? That is the exact question, Johnny, that we have asked numerous times over the past couple of weeks. And John Middleton is not immune to questioning his baseball team either.
And publicly, his players, his owner, his players, his coaches. And he flats it out there. And as owner, he has every right to do this. As any executive who's signing, he's paying $250 million to his roster. That doesn't include what he pays Rob Thompson and everybody else. And he's flat out calling it out. You cannot be passive. You can't just say, well, this is how we do it, and this is how we do it. When it's not working, an executive of John Middleton's background is going to say, guys, we don't just sit here and do the same things when it's not working. Change things up a bit. Do some things differently. How are you approaching things? What are you doing? Rethink, he uses. Pushing people. I'm telling you right now, you said it yesterday. I didn't know if I agreed with you or not, and I sort of disagreed with you. And I completely will tell you right now, if this team flames out, Rob Thompson's not the manager next year. If this team flames out, and I do not believe that they will, but if it happened, if the weirdness comes in and this team just absolutely flames out, I'm telling you right now, Thompson will not be the manager.
I want to call you crazy.
You do all the time, backstage, behind
the scenes,
office. Yes, you call
on
me
the
crazy.
air sometimes.
You call me crazy all the time.
And normally I would.
Not now, though.
It's hard for me to say that reading John Middleton's comments.
I mean, he's speaking. Who is he speaking directly to?
I believe it is Rob Thompson. I believe it's also the players, and there are going to be things that John Middleton knows about that we are not privy to, being fans compared to the owner. I don't think it's insane to say the owner of the Philadelphia Phillies may know a little bit more about his baseball team than the general public. So
no, I think he certainly does.
So I'm willing to, when the owner talks, that was the assertion in that little pre-show open, we've got to listen to what he has to say because John Middleton is the decision maker.
Yes.
And he is an owner that we have lauded in this stretch of Philadelphia Phillies baseball for the amount of money he has shelled out to big-time players, for what he has done to be accessible to the fan base, for what he's done to be open to the fan base about how much he wants to win and how he's backed up that talk with action. I love John Middleton.
And dollars.
Absolutely.
He's been the guy who he told the people, you come out, you buy tickets, you support this team, I'll spend. I will do everything I can. He's been a man of his word. And by the way, the players that he spent on have done, for the most part, a really great job.
Yes.
At delivering for him, too. It's been a great relationship. It really has.
And I think your assessment of what John Middleton may be, we're going to say maybe because we don't know for sure, but may be thinking about his manager is fair.
How could you tell me that this is what and that's why we don't talk about these things before we go on the air. How could anybody read that, spin that, and say it's not talking about the manager?
No, it is.
It is. But I mean, he is. There will be people today who attempt to say, it's Philly media making something out of nothing. Right. There is no way to interpret his comments and not understand exactly what he means. When things are going crappy, do not sit behind a microphone and tell the Philly fans and he says, we're accountable to the Philly fans. Do not sit there and go, well, it's just baseball, and we just got to stay on track and do things. And I wanted to give them a full day, and that would what you have to make sense to your boss.
Absolutely. But what I don't want to do is overstate the amount of worry because the track record still exists for Rob Thompson. Like, I don't want to treat this one article by Todd Zalecki with statements from John Middleton in there and say, wow, is there a rough patch here between Rob Thompson and John Middleton?
I don't think it's that much.
Exactly.
No.
And some people may, because there are people out there that are anti-Rob Thompson for whatever reason. Some reasons valid. Some reasons I think absolutely not. And just born out of maybe annoyance with the personality.
Sure.
Or annoyance with the way that this team has ended their past 2 postseason runs and people putting that on the manager. And I'm not saying all of that is totally unfair, but I do think some people take it too far. And when you talk about the manager potentially losing his job if things go poorly, I think some people hear that and say, oh, okay, we're going to look at that as a distinct possibility. I don't know that John Middleton's like considering that at this point.
No.
Because it's
No,
August,
because I think he believes in it, and I think he believes in his team.
That's all I'm saying about we need to be realistic about what exactly these comments mean, but there is no doubt he's talking about the manager.
And he doesn't like John Middleton, love it. He doesn't like exactly what I don't like. And I flat out will tell it. I think Rob Thompson is exceptional at building a culture, creating a 162 clubhouse. I watched a Hall of Famer and Bobby Cox do it. I watched, the early years of Brian Snitker do it with a Braves organization that always is there and wins. But the same type of stuff exists with Rob Thompson. He creates a work environment that his players love playing for him, love working for him. He always has their back, never throws them under the bus. But the difference is I saw guys like a Bobby Cox back in the day call out. I saw him yank Andrew Jones off the field for lollygagging in the middle of an inning. He walked onto the field, signaled to Andrew Jones, get your backside into the bench, and substituted for him. His star young player. Rob Thompson would never do that. He would never do it. You can be a player's manager. You can be a guy who is like Rob Thompson, and you can still have the cojones when you need to be the boss. Charlie Manuel did.
Yes.
Rob Thompson's got to be the boss, and that's what's not happened this year.
Now,
it's not happened.
Maybe it's a John thing. Maybe it's something with the name, because I think you and Mr. Middleton would see things a lot more similarly than I would see things with the manager. But, again, there are other people outside of you, John Kincade, and the owner of the Phillies, John Middleton, that feel this way, or at least start to consider this type of thought process with the manager. And I want to hear from the guy who wrote the article, the man who penned the story about John Middleton's thoughts.
How would we do that at 6:13 in the morning?
Well, Todd Zalecki joined Kevin Cooney last night, and he talked about Rob Thompson's thought process in that moment on Sunday where he decided not to pinch hit Bryce Harper or JT Realmuto, the guys who had off days, with the game on the line. Here's what Todd Zalecki had to say.
Maybe he said, listen, I'm not using you under any circumstance. I want to keep you guys fresh in postseason. That's what this whole entire season is about, is the postseason. I understand that. Everything is geared towards that. Pitcher health, player health, the way he uses his pitchers in the bullpen, all of that stuff. That said, you also want to win the game, because I'm thinking more along the lines of, are you going to get home field advantage throughout the postseason, at least through the NLCS? So, the Dodgers end up winning one more game than you this year, and now you have to go and play Game 7 of the NLCS at Dodger Stadium. It's not the end of the world, but you'd rather play it in Philly. Regardless of what happened last year in the NLCS, you'd rather play those games in Philly. So that's why that move yesterday to keep Harper on the bench scratched my head. I scratched my head in more ways than one.
Yeah, I mean, he's right. He's right about that, because one game does matter. One game does matter. And more importantly, it is Rob Thompson, John Middleton. So I went and searched for every quote I could find yesterday. Rob Thompson, John Middleton, Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, who I found on the record, all saying the bye, winning the division and getting the bye week or one of the was their goal of the season. It's so no moving the goalpost now when you've blown an 8-game lead over the Milwaukee Brewers that's now down to 1, and you're dead tied with the Dodgers, who you were up by 6 over. No spinning it now as, well, all that's important is just getting into the playoffs. It's all about October.
Yeah, now,
BS. Those guys all said from spring training, Middleton, Topper, Harper, Schwarber, on the record. They're 4 that I found. I stopped looking because they all said, win the division, get a bye week, avoid the wild card round.
Yeah, now in their defense, I haven't heard anyone not say that, right? I haven't heard any of them come out and say, well, it's okay if we don't get that. I think they're still focused on that. And while Rob Thompson made a decision on Sunday that may not point towards that direction, I don't think it changes that. I think there's more factors at play. But
if you're
this is why
focused
people
on
are questioning it.
If you're focused on it, then be it. Don't just talk about being focused on it. Be it. When you have a lousy team in and you got a chance to win games, you play to win the game. You play to win the game. Weston Wilson. Put Weston Wilson up. By the way, and I did confirm this yesterday from somebody very close who is in every single day around the Phillies. Bryce Harper can stretch. Bryce Harper's not like to the point where, well, people are like, you can't have him come in cold and bat. Bull crap. It's just dumb. It's dumb defense of something that was not defensible.
Now, here is my ultimate question about this, because that whole 16 minutes to lead off the show was framing what the statements are and how there is clear evidence that not only does the majority believe that that was the wrong decision by Rob Thompson, the owner, based on those comments, probably believes that they let an opportunity slip, and he's been seeing that happen for a while now, and it bothers him. And the reporter in Todd Zalecki, who's seen a lot of baseball and a lot of Phillies baseball, disagrees with the decision and understands what John Middleton was saying. There are plenty of people who think that that was a bad decision by Rob Thompson. But I like to look at the overall thought process because we can't go back and change Sunday.
No, you can't.
We can't find that win against the Nationals ever again. Now we have to assess, are they going about things the right way? And is the ultimate philosophy correct? And is the ultimate philosophy one that the owner agrees in? And I'm going to say something with all due respect to John Middleton, the owner of the Phillies, who I could not have more respect for in his position and what he's done for this franchise, the amount of money he spent, and the man that he is.
I sense a butt coming.
Should we listen to him? I said we should always, and not should we listen to him, should we be forced to agree with him because he's the owner of the Phillies? We should always hear what the owner has to say because his words carry weight. But ownership does not protect you from potentially viewing things the incorrect way when it comes to the way the sport is played, the way the team is handled. John Middleton, in spite of being an awesome owner for the Philadelphia Phillies, can be wrong in his evaluation of the way his baseball team needs to handle a season.
If you believe that, and I think that's very rational thought in any argument to do what you just did. So I'm going to ask you, explain to me the logic in telling your team who wants to win, who wants to get a bye and everything, that putting up a quad A player with a leadoff man on, down by 2 runs, sticking a quad A baseball player up there at the plate and letting him bat is the best strategy.
And you're still stuck on Sunday.
No, I am, because it's what he's talking about.
We got to
You're being passive, because here's why I'm stuck on Sunday. Because I know this. Rob Thompson's so dug in, he's not changing.
Right.
And it is going, and his boss is telling him, hey, dude, change.
Yeah.
Dude,
and I think
what you're doing, you just blew an 8-game lead over the Brewers that's down to 1. And you blew a 6-game lead over the Dodgers. You had them buried. The Dodgers you'd shoveled dirt on their grave, and you've now let them tie you. What you're doing and how you're reacting to it is not working. John Middleton saying, when you do this in any walk of life, your boss is going to say to you, what are we doing here? Why are we keep doing the same things? Change something up. And to me, well, just baseball.
Well, John and Connor, let me ask you this, right? I think we're kind of getting lost in the fact that we all love John Middleton as the owner of the Phillies, as the president, everything he does, right, for this team. if it was a Josh Harris kind of coming out and the Sixers are having the best record in basketball all season, and Josh Harris comes out in the middle of the season and says, I don't like the way the coach is doing things. Or if Jeffrey Lurie does that to a Nick Sirianni, Andy Reid, whoever you want, and they're the best team in football, and he says, I don't like the way you're doing things, are we going to kind of question why he's doing that? But because it's John Middleton and we appreciate everything he's done building this team back, that we kind of take it as a good thing. If Jerry Jones said something like this, we'd laugh at the Cowboys.
I'd like to believe we would have the same conversation where it could be a valid, like we have to consider it because the owner makes the decisions, but owners can be wrong. And I believe that John Middleton is not 100% wrong here, but I'm glad today that he is the owner of the baseball team and not the manager of the baseball team. And part of the reason is what makes him great as an owner. John Middleton is more of a fan of the Philadelphia Phillies than he will ever be a manager of the Philadelphia Phillies. And I think in his role that suits him.
Here's another thing, though, that you got to take into consideration. And by the way, B-Gun, that's a great point. What I will just tell you is John Middleton's very connected to his players, talks to them all the time. And I don't go to the clubhouse all the time, but John Middleton's around. I guarantee you he's talked to players, too. And I wonder, is it players' voices also that are in his ear?
So our question now to get to it, and we'll continue this conversation throughout the show. We're going to get into more of that great article from Todd Zalecki on MLB.com. But our question is starting. You can chime in 610-632-0975. Call in, text in. Do you agree with what John Middleton's saying? I don't think there's any debate as to why he's saying it and who he's saying it to. But do you agree with the owner's assessment of his baseball team? Or do you think that his passion might be making him a little bit hasty for wanting things to change? We'll continue that conversation on the other side. We're also going to ask about the Eagles and if the offense is going to have to carry the defense. Well, we asked that last year, and it didn't exactly work out. So why would this year be different? It should be. We'll talk about it coming up on the other side. I'm Connor Thomas, sitting in for Andrew Salciunas, John Kincade to my left, Brendan Gunn on the board. We're back after this here on 97.5 The Fanatic. Fanatic Studios. Connor Thomas sitting in for Andrew Salciunas. He'll be back tomorrow. John Kincade to my left. We got Brendan Gunn in my seat at the board today. And we started with the guy who's at the head of the board for the Philadelphia Phillies, John Middleton, who talked in an article with Todd Zalecki of MLB.com about his feelings on the team, the stretch they've been in, pushing the players and the coaches, which feels like the more important part of that statement.
He says pushing, can't have a passive approach, need to rethink things that you're doing when they're not working.
Absolutely. And all of those things, I think, are valid feelings to have about the Phillies right now. But what I will say is that part of what makes John Middleton great, and we talked about it in the opening segment a little bit, is that he is a true Philadelphia Phillies fan. He's from here.
Oh,
He's not some billionaire that flew in from the other side of the country. Well, he is some billionaire, but he's not some billionaire who flew in
Not one
from
of those billionaires,
like Los Angeles or New York or
Jeffrey
somewhere.
Lurie, who came from the north.
Exactly, and says, well, I want to purchase a team. This is a team that's available for sale, and that is how I became the Phillies owner. And because of that, I think he has a lot of the DNA of a Philadelphia fan. And that may not be a great thing for someone who would make decisions about the play style of the team.
Can I ask you are you being devil's advocate on this, or do you believe that?
I believe John Middleton's incorrect here.
Okay, what is he incorrect about?
I think that he is being too knee-jerk with the stretch that the Philadelphia Phillies have gone through. Not that it wasn't a bad stretch, but he strikes me, and Todd Zalecki mentions in the article, how emotional John Middleton is in his suite during games. Like, you see some owners, and they sit there and they take it in because they're not true fans of the team. They want the team to win, but they're not you and me sitting on our couch screaming at the TV when someone gets out.
I don't know how, and I've sat next to Connor for quite a few games in the press box, and I'm shocked that both of us can always keep the decorum of not
tough.
Making noise during a game.
Because I don't do it when I'm not in the press box.
Every once in a while to be the, I'll bang the fist on the desk to just stop from yelling or saying something. You see something happen and you're like, give it a little just do something. John Middleton lets it fly.
Yes, he does. Now, here's the thing. My philosophy on baseball is very similar to that of Rob Thompson's in a lot of ways.
Okay.
In that I think baseball is a 162 game long, when your team is talented enough, and there is no debate. If you're going to tell me the Philadelphia Phillies are a baseball team that is not talented enough, you're flat out wrong. Doesn't mean they're going to win.
You're wrong.
Yeah, but
you're flat out wrong.
And there are some people who are crazy who believe that this team isn't good enough. They didn't do enough this all. You're insane. You're wrong. This team is talented enough. If you have a talented enough baseball team, baseball turns into a 162 game long game of chicken where you have to spend 5-6 months believing your team is as good as you think they are, and that at the end of the day, they're going to prove it. We're going to talk a little bit coming up in the 7 o'clock hour about something else that John Middleton talked about in this article, and it comes from former Philadelphia Phillies GM Pat Gillick, a Hall of Famer, and something he told Mr. Middleton about the way you go about winning a World Series. And that's going to continue to make my point for me. But I think that the cooler head when it comes to baseball is the more beneficial one to have in the clubhouse. It doesn't matter for the owner. I'm not saying John Middleton shouldn't be this way. Like, he can be. I'm just glad that we have someone who is a little bit more conservative in his reaction to when things go wrong than what it seems like John Middleton's being.
John Middleton's not overreacting at 8 weeks of bad baseball. He's not. Not with the amount of money he's spending. Not for this team to be a 500 team for 2 months after the way that they played. He's not overreacting. If he had said these exact same things after 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I completely agree with you at that point, and I would have been saying it. 8 weeks, forget it. You cannot play 62 games and just be puttering around and really not looking good doing it. And then just say, yeah, it's overreacting. No, 2 months of mediocre baseball, which, by the way, for this team, that's bad baseball. That's bad.
Yeah.
Is unacceptable. I don't think he's overreacting to anything.
And you know what's great about that, John, is the owner of the team agrees with you. And there are people in the fan base who agree with you. So it's not a crazy assertion that he is reacting the right way. And I disagree, and I'm interested to see if anyone out there is on my side in that John Middleton is being too reactionary.
Well, the thing is, you can have a 162 approach.
Yes.
And not decide to not try to win a game that was very winnable in the ninth inning.
Again,
you can have a 162
we don't
approach.
disagree on Sunday there from that perspective.
But the thing is, though, that's the kind of stuff that is making John Middleton react. That's the kind of stuff that makes people across baseball react and shake their heads. Just going, okay, I've watched this game a long time. I have no idea what he's doing. I have no idea why he's doing it.
Yeah, I mean, we got some people checking in so far. So
what's the
and
feeling like this morning?
They're hot. They're just not agreeing with Connor.
Okay, go ahead.
What is
they
it
could
about?
be wrong as well.
No, I mean it's and look, I think, by the way, I think you both have made points, and I'm glad. This is why we don't talk about it before. I think you both have made points that have made me go, okay.
Yeah,
good point.
I don't
Like,
necessarily
thoughtful
think
point.
he's wrong in what he's saying. I just don't think he should be saying it.
Okay.
I mean, when I look back, once a time a good thing came out of an owner coming out and saying something like this. Like, maybe I'm forgetting, but I can't
I don't
recall
think it's usually
any kind of
a good thing.
I don't even remotely.
And I'm not saying it's going to bury the Phillies. I still expect them to get to where they need to be, but they might be the anomaly.
No. Like, here's the thing. I don't remotely consider the repercussions of this. That's not at all what the conversation should be. I don't think Bryce Harper's going to hear this and be like, oh, the owner's questioning us. I don't think Rob Thompson's going to hear this and be like, oh, John Middleton said that. Like, they interact every day. The clubhouse seems fine. The organization seems fine. These guys
we said the same thing about...
What are you going to say? Don't you dare say the Philadelphia Eagles.
I'm saying when they were
not,
10
though.
and 2,
It's
it's
not,
not
though.
that yet. But at the beginning stages of that, you can make a million excuses. Like, we have to see this thing play out before I can say it's not going to have that
But
effect.
the owner's allowed to voice his concern. And the players are, like, if you take that, that's more on the players than it is on the owner. I have no issues with it.
I'm also going to say to you this, though. From observing baseball as long as I have and seeing clubhouses and seeing owners and everything, John Middleton is connected to that clubhouse and his players as much as any owner I think I've ever seen. And I saw Ted Turner, I mean, for God's sakes, who tried to manage his team. And what I would tell you is, do you not think for a second that John Middleton may be voicing opinions that maybe he's hearing from his employees?
That scares me more.
That some of them are like, look, you can love your boss. You could think your boss is great. You could think your boss does 4 things exceptionally well. And you can think he does 1 or 2 things that are absolutely stupid and don't make sense and you want fixed. And when your big boss asks you about it and asks for your opinion, you might share it.
Yeah, but the big boss is not the manager. Like,
I got you.
The players are not the manager.
Like, I don't think he's undermining Rob Thompson with this,
I'm not saying that.
no, but I mean,
Yeah.
I think it would be naive to think he hasn't heard some of these things from his players.
And that's why Rob Thompson has a job. Because the players don't run the team, and the owner doesn't. Well, the owner doesn't run the team, but he owns the team. But the owner doesn't run like the baseball day-to-day operations. Yeah. Rob Thompson's job is to handle the management of this team. And John Middleton, with all due respect, does not have the qualifications to manage a professional baseball team.
No, not at all.
And he's a great owner, and he does an amazing job, and I'm not taking anything away from him whatsoever. But when I hear him say this, and I disagree with it, I say, okay, that's a guy who's a fan of this team, who's voicing his displeasure, who carries all the weight in the world as to what this organization is going to do at the end of this season. But right now, I think he is just as wrong as Joe Schmo from South Philly, who believes that this team is dead in the water or anything like that.
He's also a man who watched and learned watching how Charlie Manuel did it to a world championship.
That's not fair to compare.
No, I think it is very fair to say when Charlie Manuel's players went off script and went and did what wasn't considered the standard of behavior, of hustle, of whatever, Charlie Manuel had zero issue calling them out publicly, and sitting behind a microphone saying it, doing it, saying it, and then getting over it and letting the player redeem themselves. And
I think it's a little bit different, though, when it's coming from the manager. I wish this was coming from Rob Thompson. Obviously, you can't question himself because that would be crazy, but I wish he would come out and be harsher on his players. My issue with this is Rob Thompson manages the game in such a finicky way. If the owner's kind of questioning that, does it trickle down a little bit and have the players question it a little bit? And if they question it a little bit, I don't think Rob Thompson's managing style can completely work because you have to be completely bought in for that to work.
Okay, we got to get to this point with you. You cannot worry about players questioning things. You cannot worry about owners questioning things. If you're not questioning things, you're an idiot. Like, every player questions things their coaches does. Every coach questions things their players do. Every owner questions things their manager does. That's a healthy working relationship.
It's a human nature thing.
That only leads to problems when there are other underlying issues. Lack of trust in the owner and what he wants to accomplish. Lack of trust in the talent level of the team. Lack of trust in the manager's resume. All of those things are taken care of. So this is not a major issue. This is more of a philosophy question and how we're supposed to consume this stretch the Phillies are in right now. And I think the owners on the side of the fan base, I think the large majority, are wrong. So that's where that comes from. Now, we do have to get into this Eagles conversation, so we're going to get into it coming up. I'm sorry we should have gotten to it there, but we're going to get into that. We're also going to check the text line because, Brendan, I know you said a lot of people disagreeing with what I have to say. I want to hear from the fan base because I believe they're on the side of the owner. And I know I'm kind of on an island over here today. I'm okay with that. I'll continue to make my case. I'm Connor Thomas sitting in for Andrew Salciunas, John Kincade to my left, Brendan Gunn on the board. We're back after this for more Kincade and Salciunas here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
This week, the Eagles get ready to play their final preseason game Saturday against the Minnesota Vikings. Listen all
Attic Studios, Connor Thomas sitting in for Andrew Salciunas. He'll be back tomorrow, enjoying his last day of vacation. We've been talking heavy Phillies with the posting of an article by Todd Zalecki of MLB.com on John Middleton, the Phillies owner's thoughts on the team's struggles over the past month and a half, 2-month stretch. And it's interesting to hear the thoughts of the man at the top of the organization. I don't believe that you always are forced to agree just because he's the guy in charge of, he owns the team. Well, it doesn't mean that like John Middleton has this managerial career or front office career or like even baseball playing career. And I think he's a great owner. I'm not trying to take anything away from John Middleton. I think it's fair to question, and I am, but it doesn't sound like a lot of people are, or at least are on the opposite side of Mr. Middleton. So we're going to check in on the text line coming up.
Oh, now it's Mr. Middleton.
Yes.
Now you're getting very formal.
I think I've gone Mr. Middleton
now
once
you're
or
going
twice
very
throughout
formal
the show.
on this one.
But 610-632-0975 is the phone number to call in or text in your thoughts on John Middleton's comments about the Phillies needing to change things up, push things further, keep working at getting out of this.
Rethink
stretch.
how they do things.
Exactly.
Stop the passive approach.
So we're going to check in on that in just a second, but I also want to open up this conversation on the Eagles because, John, you had an interesting question about the balance between the offense and the defense and whether or not we're expecting the offense to have to carry the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I'm looking at right now, and I look more at, like, can we get – I almost look at the NFL season, and it's weird because last year it's sort of where it broke. Getting to Thanksgiving and then the what happens after Thanksgiving. And to me, I always think you want to be peaking after Thanksgiving. Last year, the Eagles, right after Thanksgiving Sunday when they beat the Bills, that's when the roller coaster started heading downhill. Looking at it, I'm thinking, look, this defense, no matter how excited everybody is about it, no matter all the good press, they're going to have bumps in the road.
For sure.
They're going to be young players are going to be exposed. Young players are going to bump around. A few years ago, the Chiefs did that in their Super Bowl season in 2022 when they beat the Eagles. The first half of the year, that defense was bumpy. And then they started to trend upwards as some of the younger players got their experience. And I'm looking, I said, the Eagles, thank God they have an offense that's built to carry them. And then Connor says to me yesterday, well, isn't that what we thought last year?
It's exactly what we said, isn't it? And that means two things. Right? You can look at things two ways. I always try and see both sides of the coin.
Right.
It's either a benefit or a fault of mine, depending on the conversation. But when you look at it, you say, well, we trust the offense. So you have all the talent in the world. We trust the new coordinator in Kellen Moore, who we're going to hear from coming up at 9:40, his press conference today. We're going to carry that live here. If you trust the offense, then, well, you should trust them to carry the defense just like we did last year. And if you believe the problems from last year are gone, then this should be something that is a realistic expectation, right?
I also think the defense should be a lot better.
That's the thing, yes.
As far as scheme, as far as understanding where they're supposed to be, young players are going to screw up.
For sure.
And they're going to miscommunications and over aggressiveness at times and things like that. But this offense should be damn good enough, right?
The other part of the conversation, though, the flip side of the coin is, do we trust our eyes? Do we trust what we're hearing? Do we trust our ability to evaluate this team to say that? Because last year, I think everybody was very confident that the offense was going to be able to carry the defense.
I didn't know that 2 creams, 1 sugar was going to be so incompetent. I really didn't. And I also didn't know how bad Nick Sirianni was going to be when he needed to step in more at fixing it.
And there's another thing that we're going to get into because we're going to continue this conversation throughout the show as well on the offense and defense and the balance between those two sides of the ball for the Eagles this year. Is it the norm for teams in the modern NFL where offense has become such the calling card of the league? It's no longer defense wins championships.
No.
It's quarterbacks win championships. It's high-powered offenses win championships. It's coaching wins championships. With that the defense wins championships argument is your grandpa's argument. The NFL is different. So when we look around the league where it's at right now, are offenses carrying defenses the norm? Is that the likely scenario for a team to be great?
I was trying to think of when you brought that up. A team in my head that says their defense leads. I don't Maybe Baltimore.
That offense, you got a 2-time MVP playing quarterback.
No, I got you. But I don't consider the Baltimore offense like, you bet, man, strap down, man. You're facing Lamar. I don't think you tend to say, oh man, look at all the stars on Baltimore's offense.
That's a fair point.
Lamar's that awesome. The defense that just dominates and wins. I think San Francisco's defense is every bit as good as their offense. But I don't think there's teams that really lead with the defense anymore.
Which would be my argument as to why this is a realistic expectation. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into the specifics of that with the Eagles, but I want to check in on the text line. Brendan, what do we have on that Phillies conversation with the John Middleton article?
Yeah, we got a ton of people checking in. First, we got Blaine in Kentucky. He says, I had two trains of thought when I heard this. One is that Middleton obviously knows these comments are coming out, so he's saying these things to try to light a fire under the team and wake them up. Very likely, but my immediate second thought was, well, what does this say about how the owner feels about the manager? If he feels he needs to come out and say this publicly and send a message to his team, he clearly does not trust the message the manager is sending.
That's not it. I don't know it's a trust thing. A disagreement. But if you don't trust the manager, he wouldn't be here.
Yeah, I don't think it's a trust thing.
No, but he can disagree. You can say, listen, man, I want you to do things a different way. Like, my philosophy is different from yours, and I'm going to voice it because I don't like what I'm seeing with this baseball team right now.
And I think that he is trying more along the lines of, my manager is just coming out every single day and has no answers. Just says, well, this is the way we do things. It's a long season. It's baseball. It's 162. And he doesn't dig that. Because in no other walk of life is that an acceptable response when you have 2 months of just terrible, terrible production.
But if Rob Thompson walked into John Middleton's office today and said, John, trust me, I've taken you to the World Series and one game away from it the past 2 years. I know what I'm doing. I think there's a very valid reason for John Middleton to look at that and say, well, that's why I do still trust you. I disagree with the way things are going right now. And you got to make a decision on how much you want to try and affect a manager who's had success in this town. That's why this is such a interesting, deep conversation, because both sides have arguments. Who knows who's right? We'll continue to talk about it coming up next. And there's more to the article than just what John Middleton had to say about the players and the coaches. This is something coming up that we're going to talk about that I've been trying to tell people for years about this Phillies team. What is it? And is it something you're going to disagree with me again on? We'll get into it coming up to start the 7 o'clock hour. I'm Connor Thomas sitting in for Andrew Salciunas, John Kincade to my left, Brennan Gunn on the board. We're back after this here on Kincade Salciunas, 97.5, The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
Heading down to the ATL. I'm Brendan Gunn, and this update is brought to you by PJ Wheelahan's Fire.
Studios, 1 hour down. I'm Connor Thomas sitting in for Andrew Salciunas. He'll be back tomorrow. It's been a spirited first hour of the show as we've been discussing John Middleton's comments on his baseball team, the owner of the Phillies, and what he's had to say about the stretch that the Phils went through and are still somewhat in. It looks like they're coming out of it, but we are also going to, trust me, we're going to get into what's going on currently with the team. Because while we were having this overarching conversation about John Middleton's thoughts that were outlaid in a great article by Todd Zalecki of MLB.com, the Phillies start a big series with the Braves tonight down in Atlanta. We're going to talk to Jeff Francoeur about that coming up at 9 a.m. We do have Jeff McLane to jump in on some Eagle stuff with at 8:10, so a very busy show still to come. But that's, like we said it in the open, when the owner talks, it's time for the fan base to listen.
You listen, and again, it does not require you agreeing with it.
No.
But I do ask again what people would disagree with. As far as Rob Thompson's approach, it's a little too, and in his mind, I'm going to use his words, passive. When you have a passive approach, you got to rethink the way you do things. In any other walk of life, a boss is not allowing you to go, look, this is how we've always done it. This is just this. Just relax. It's been 2 months of being crapola.
Yes. And baseball is not any other walk of life. And when we talk about this next thing that was in that same article, it gives a little bit more color to the way that John Middleton thinks about the sport of baseball and his baseball teams of the past. So we're going to talk about that in a second. But we're also discussing the balance between the Eagles' offense and the defense. Now, John, you asked, is the offense going to have to carry the defense? And I think that that is a completely rational way to look at the start of this season. The offense is the much more proven unit. That's why they didn't play in the preseason. I have to believe. It's because you look at the names up and down the offensive side of the ball, and you compare them to the ones that Vic Fangio's working with on defense, and you say, well, there's a lot of reason to trust the offense more than you trust the defense. And we kind of got into there before the top of the hour struck about how around the NFL that's become more of the norm. You see a lot more offensive-centric teams in the way the game is played. It's why the quarterbacks have become so paid and overpaid in some sense. And so I think it's natural. But do you hear that and worry about last year when we approached the season the same way and we saw an offense that was bland at best and negligent at worst?
Yeah, and I expect none of that in any way to be the norm under the offense coordinator, Kellen Moore. You'll hear from him later on in the show today. Everything that we've seen in the quick rollout has been great. And to me, when I hear players advocating for it, it's great. But again, he's got 5 years of proven production. When he has his starting quarterback, you're talking top 4 in points, number 1 in scheming wide receivers into open space. We're going to see a lot more yards after catch and things like that this year.
We are.
That we haven't seen.
Now, what do you think is on that conversation, the realistic chance that the defense carries their own weight? Is this a type of question that you ask saying, I don't believe the defense is going to be ready at the start of the season to carry their weight to the point where the Eagles can reach their ceiling? And that's going to have to be something we see this defense grow into over the course of 17 games? Or is this, there are question marks, and I think it's going to work out for the defense, but this is more of a safety net strategy where you want the offense to be so talented. There's no way that if the defense is not as good as we think they are, that it can even upset the ceiling of this team.
If we get to the bye week and the Eagles are winning games with defense, let's just make the Super Bowl reservations now.
Oh, I like it.
If we go to bye week, week 4, and right off the bat, the Eagles defense is picking off, and I'm going to be looking for one of the number one things. Getting teams, how about 2? Picking the ball off and stripping the ball and taking the ball away, which they did horribly last year. And the other one's going to be, can they get teams off in third down? Can you get, and I'm not talking every third down, but last year was just miserable when drives would just 3rd and 6, convert. 3rd and 4, convert. Can they get teams off the field in third down? If those 2 things are happening the first 4 weeks, book it right now. Bourbon Street's coming.
I love it. I love the sound of that.
Bourbon Street will be there.
Not just because I love New Orleans, but
And remember, I already think they're going to be in the Final Four, but that's as chesty as I'll get because I have a ton of respect for San Fran.
man, it's good to hear. It goes back to why we were so positive about the Philadelphia Eagles yesterday when we were having the conversation about a smooth training camp and preseason to this point. Things are looking good for the Birds. And here's what I'll say on that question I asked you about if this is a safety net or if this is a necessity type of idea, the offense carrying the defense. I don't expect to see the Eagles offense walking around with dragging the defense with them. Like, I don't expect them to look at the defense as a ball and chain that restricts this football team and the offense has to overcome something. I think this defense is going to be good enough that this team will win, maybe not win games because of the defense, but we won't be looking at it as, do you remember the Jets game last year? And it was the opposite in the Jets game last year because Jalen Hurts was horrible in that game.
It was horrible.
And you lost that game because of the turnovers the offense allowed and not so much the things that the defense didn't do. But we looked at it after and we're like, man, the defense did everything they were asked to do. The offense did nothing they were asked to do. I don't see this year as having a major disparity between the two sides of the ball when it comes to the results of the game. The talent level, it's going to be evident that the offense is the more talented unit. But I think there are enough players on the defense, and I trust Vic Fangio enough to institute his scheme the way it should be run, the bend don't break defense, that we're going to be looking at it as, well, clearly the offense is the calling card of this team, but the defense is doing what they need to do to make sure that they are not a noticeable reason that this team is struggling in any way.
Well, I'll tell you, if that happens, again, this team should reach every expectation.
Do you think that's too bold of a prediction?
Yes.
You're looking at me kind of weird.
Yeah, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet to think this team. And I'm just going to take even just to the bye week, Green Bay, and then it's the Falcons, and it's the Saints, and it's the Bucks. That we're going to be saying, man, the defense really they won them that game. Because first off, it's going to scare the hell out of me if we are. Because I'm expecting in those first 4 games, by the end of game 4, this offense better be at 110 points. Something along those lines.
Yeah.
It better be at 27 points a game, something along those lines.
Totally
And
agree.
if they're not, I'm going to be maybe we've overvalued the offense and what went wrong with the offense. And if anything goes wrong with the offense, I am going to wonder, did the offensive line break down? Is something not right with the offensive line?
And I think those are fair questions if that is indeed what we see through the first 4 weeks of this season. So those are our 2 questions. Our first one dealing with John Middleton and his comments in a Todd Zlecki MLB.com article. Do you believe that the owner's urging for urgency with his baseball team from the players and the coaches to find a way out of a stretch that has not been the type of baseball we saw this team play for the first 3.5 months of the season? Do you believe that that is, 1, warranted, and 2, the correct type of mentality to have with this team? And then on the Eagles conversation, do you believe that the offense is going to be carrying the defense, whether it's for the full season, whether it's for the first 4 weeks, which are the parameters that John has set around that? At any point, do you think that this offense, well, not at any point because there will be games for any team, but for stretches of the season, do you see this as a necessity that the Eagles offense is going to have to carry the defense? You can chime in on both of those, 610-632-0975. You can call us at that number. You can text us at that number. But I want to get into this next part of that MLB.com article we've been referencing so much during the show today, because there's a very interesting interaction that was pointed to between John Middleton and a name that we'll all remember for being a big part of why that 2008 team was able to bring the first World Series since 1980 to this Philadelphia Phillies organization. Pat Gillick.
Okay.
And this comes from...
who's a great front office guy for the young people in our audience that maybe don't know. The man was a great front office exec.
Multiple World Series before coming to Philadelphia with the Blue Jays. He won one here. He is a Hall of Fame executive, was inducted to the Baseball Hall of Fame in 2011 for his work. There is no debating whether or not Pat Gillick knows what he's talking about.
Fantastic.
This is the excerpt from the article. Former Phillies general manager Pat Gillick said exactly that during his first day on the job in December 2005. Middleton, Gillick, and late President David Montgomery were having lunch in the executive dining room when Gillick asked Middleton if he had any questions. Middleton asked Gillick, who won 2 World Series with the Blue Jays in 92 and 93, what it takes to win a championship. Luck, Gillick said. The answer surprised Middleton. Well, I get lucky in a lot of phases in my life, he said. I don't know exactly how you think luck plays in a World Series title, which I think is a fair question that a lot of fans have asked about baseball and this Phillies team and teams across the landscape of Major League Baseball for hundreds of years.
Right.
Well, John, Gillick said, talking to John Middleton, not John Kincade, but I think the point could carry to either.
So my ears are perked up.
Well, John, Gillick said, good organizations consistently produce good teams that compete for and often get in the playoffs. But the difference between getting in the playoffs and winning the World Series is luck. Because to win the World Series, you have to have 25 healthy guys who are playing well at precisely the right moment in time. You can look at almost every season, and there's a team that if the season stopped in July and they had the World Series, a different team would win the World Series than the team that ultimately won it. That sounds like 2 things to me. One, it sounds like exactly what has happened to the Philadelphia Phillies the past 2 years in the postseason. Now, both ways, both times, they've gotten hot at the right time to make it to the World Series in 2022 and the NLCS in 2023. And then they've gotten cold at the wrong time at the end of the road to the point where they did not finish the job.
A couple things. One, just look back to a couple of years ago when the Braves won. No, you don't have to be healthy. You need 25 guys healthy. Totally false. They lost numerous stars, replaced them with spare parts, and won a World Series. So I don't buy into that part of it.
You don't think that that was the anomaly more than
whoa. No question you are correct. No question you're correct. On the average year, yeah. But every team is going to face some injury adversity and have to overcome it. Going to have to replace a starting pitcher out of your rotation that's missing. But luck, to me, and I don't know if you know this, we've worked together long enough. One of the words that I hate most in the English language. Because I think it's a way people demean other people's accomplishments. Look how lucky he is. Look how lucky he is. You're really lucky. You're lucky you got this opportunity in your career. You're lucky you got this. I think it's a way other people downplay other people's accomplishments.
And it's funny because the more we get to, and we've worked with each other for years by this point, Johnny, even before this iteration of Kincade and Salciunas. So we know each other well, but the more that I learn about you, the more that I realize that some of our base principles on how we view life are just different.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But one of the number one ways I describe myself when I get to talk about this job that we get to do is to say how lucky I am.
Oh, no.
And I use that word constantly to describe a bunch of different things in life, and I love luck.
See, I think, and I look at you, and I will tell you right now, bull on you being lucky. It's not luck. It's not luck that you're... I told you this yesterday morning before you turned on the microphone. It's not luck that you're sitting in that chair. There's luck. Luck had nothing to do with it. Circumstance leads to things, but your work ethic, your desire to succeed, those things put you in that chair.
Now, I understand what you're saying, and I'm going to stop you for sake of too much nice things said about me.
Yeah, but I don't want to say any more.
To point this...
God, I have nothing to say nice about you.
To point this to the Phillies, we're looking at it. But the big part of it is talent.
Yes,
right?
It's talent, and more importantly, it's working for opportunities that you receive. It's doing things the right way.
Yes.
It's coming in every day with a work ethic. It's not accepting, as I've said with this team, crappy base running decisions that never get called out by the manager. It's not. There's so many things that the manager just it's okay. Getting runners picked off, first base, terrible base running decisions, stupid errors, not knowing what base to throw it into. That to me is nonchalant. And to me, I think that that has nothing to do with luck.
What about the hitting, though? When they're on those rampages early on against the Braves, the Marlins, and they're putting up 10, and then it just so happens that they go cold? Like, I can't say it's because they're changing their approach. It just so happens the bat's not making contact with the ball at that point.
Could it be that your approach is not one that is long-term sustainable?
That's
that
cool.
The approach you have is
but if you get
it's
lucky,
that it's not beer league salt, but you're not going to be lucky for 3.5 weeks. You will not be.
I mean, we were lucky for 2 months with that to start the season.
You're going to not be lucky in the postseason because you're not going to play the Marlins and the Nationals and things like that.
Well, that's why
Don't compare what happens in the regular season to October.
Well, that's why you need talent. But
you need lots of talent, but you also need to say, I've got a talented team. My approach is not going to deal with luck, is going to deal with doing things the right way every day.
No, see,
knowing how to run the bases, knowing where to throw the ball in. For God's sakes, hit a cutoff, man. Like the basic stuff that never gets checked in this town.
Here's what I think you're hearing from that, what Pat Gillick said to John Middleton, is banking on luck. And that is completely not the right way to go about it. You cannot say, like, well, we can get in and just be lucky, and that's how you win a world. Like, it's not that simple. Right? Luck is not
fair.
the entire equation, but it's absolutely part of it. And as talented of a baseball team as you can put together, you are going to have to get bounces. You're going to have to be hot at the right time. You're going to have some semblance of luck or circumstance or whatever you want to call it to get to where you want to be. And that is why when people lose their minds about the NLCS last year or lose their minds about the World Series the year before, and they look at this team and they turn that into major questions about the makeup of this team, the talent level of this team, the manager of this team, I say, well, luck does have something to do with it.
It wasn't lucky that the Astros didn't throw strikes the last 3 games to the Phillies batters and they struck out and flailed out and couldn't hit it with a boat paddle. It wasn't lucky that the Arizona Diamondbacks refused to throw Harper, Schwarber, and others a strike.
Well,
they literally struck out on swinging at stuff that wasn't even in the zone because they didn't change their approach.
If it's not luck, do you think this team is dead in the water then?
No.
Like, if you don't believe in Rob Thompson and you don't believe in the luck portion of it, then
I think
I don't know if you believe they can win.
Well, it's what I said to you is I believe this team in October is a coin flip as to whether they can win yesterday.
Isn't that luck a little bit?
I think, no, it's not because it depends. How about this? The Philadelphia Eagles in 2017. I really believe Atlanta beating the Rams helped because you got to play Atlanta. Then you got the crazy bounce off Keanu Neal's knee that helped you win that Atlanta game. That was luck. That's a lucky play. You needed it. I think then the Minneapolis Miracle that brought the Vikings here instead of the Saints, though it may have pleased your mom and your brother.
It did in the next week.
It absolutely should have pleased every Eagles fan because I don't think they would have beaten the Saints.
Yeah, dude.
And a lot of people feel that they would have, and I got to tell you, I think that there was luck involved in that run.
That's the ultimate example, and that's almost too much luck. Like that.
But they
was
had a few
crazy.
They had a weird things.
That's like hitting the lottery.
The Keanu Neal thing, I'll take credit for. He lived in my house, so I will take credit for that.
But that run for the Eagles was like hitting the lottery. With the talent,
it was unbelievable.
With the talent this Phillies team has,
it wouldn't
and
be
the health they
lot,
still.
right?
It's like winning a $5 scratch off. You still you can still
right.
lose just randomly based on who knows what. But you have to do everything you can to put yourself in the best situation. Where this conversation turns, though, and this is something I want to ask people out there, because the luck quotient of sports, whether you believe it's a bigger part or a smaller part of the equation, it's an undeniable part of it to some extent. There are things that just bounces happen, games of inches. That's all based around what happens one day, it doesn't happen the next day. It's not overarching, but it is something to consider.
Sure.
What I want to ask is, will we ever be able to truly acknowledge that there may be something out there that we can't control and they can't control and the manager can't control and the players can't control with a team we're so emotionally invested in? Because I think this Phillies fan base cannot come to a point where they can agree with what Pat Gillick's saying. Because we are so invested in this team winning because of how good they are that we won't be able to accept, oh, well, they just weren't lucky enough. I don't think mentally this fan base can get to that point. And I'm interested in your thoughts on that. At 610-632-0975. You can call in. You can text in. Now, I think we're getting caught up in a bit of an Eagles PR campaign, Johnny.
Uh-oh.
And it has to deal with the linebacker room. And we're going to discuss that coming up. And you may tell me I'm crazy.
Oh, I'll tell you you're crazy during the break.
And I hope I am. We'll talk about it on the other side, as well as continue that Phillies conversation. I'm Connor Thomas, sitting in for Andrew Salciunas. This is Kincade Salciunas. Back after this here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
A big series down in Atlanta.
Premier Fanatic Studios, Connor Thomas with you, sitting in for Andrew Salciunas. Going to be back tomorrow. John Kincade, still going to be here tomorrow. Brendan Gunn, also still going to be here tomorrow. And it's going to be a busy week leading through a big series for the Phillies, getting closer to week 1 for the Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of stuff going on around the Philadelphia sports scene currently. And
what makes you feel good about a team, though? Team bonding and everything?
I do like that.
There was 2 groups of Phillies out at one of my favorite spots when I lived in Atlanta last night.
Oh, really?
For dinner. Worked out a connection for them. And so large group of people going out to dinner and bonding. They seem like they're in a good place. And they ran up quite the tab.
I'm sure they did. That's part of this conversation, right? Because Brendan brought up the whole, an owner talking this way.
Sure.
Does that undermine something? Does that make players feel a certain type of way? Does it make the manager feel a certain type of way? There's been no point. I'm convinced, right? It's not ideal. I'm not putting this out in the universe. I'm convinced the Phillies could lose 100 straight baseball games. And that locker room would probably still be like a place where these guys they're such a good group of personalities. And that doesn't mean you win baseball games because of it. But it means when you're going through stretches like this, I never question that part of it. You may question the manager's decisions. You may question the approach at the plate. You may question the focus of the team on the goal. But the interaction between the players and the manager and the front office and the ownership is as good with the Philadelphia Phillies, I think, as any organization we've seen in this city.
No lies detected. I think they have a really healthy organization.
And that's part of the equation. It's a small part.
Yeah, I want them to win.
Part of the
I
equation.
want them to win, though.
Yes.
I don't want to see another year of decline.
I don't either.
Lost in the World Series, lost in the NLCS. Better not lose in the NLDS.
No.
You better not.
Because then we're going to feel like it's 08, 09, 10 all over again.
And it should be. But the thing is, this time, while you're still talented, you need to have a tourniquet, and you need to stop the bleeding and change things up.
Right.
And I think John Middleton's comments lead you to believe that could happen.
I think that, and again,
if the disaster happens.
Yes. And for reference, too, because B-Gun brought this up during the break, that article is from Friday. So these comments were made as they were kind of coming out of the stretch. They had won some of the games against the Nationals, but the Sunday game hadn't happened yet. Just for frame of reference of when John Middleton was making those comments. But the point still stands on the philosophy. Just want people to have a proper framing for when these things were said.
And we both said, you and I both said, Andrew set the 5-1 for the homestand. You and I both said 4-2.
Because we're smart.
I will walk away from a 4-2 homestand every single time.
You know what's funny?
Unless it's the last one of the year and you blow, terrible.
We get to destinations a very different way. But I think you and I end up at conclusions
many times
in similar spots. Yeah, and sometimes Andrew's off in left field somewhere.
Yeah, I think you like to take if we're heading to King of Prussia, I'm going to hop on the Schuylkill and take the straightest route possible. When I hear Connor think things out, Connor's he's taking it going through Balcombe, he's going to take it through Bryn Mawr. Then he's going to cut past Villanova. Then he's going to go over and take the back roads up, and we're going to end up at the same place.
Yeah, there's some nice houses out there. I want to see the sights, Johnny.
Connor's all. I tell you though, you have done more to sway me to your way of thinking than dissuade me from your thinking.
And
today, so I'm just saying, listening ears have been on, and I think both of you are not nearly as dumb as I thought you were going into the conversation. So I want to give you the highest compliment possible.
We appreciate that.
I like Gunner's too. I like his point about, if Jerry Jones did this.
Yes.
How do we look at it?
Now,
so it's interesting.
You're going to have to win me over on this one.
Okay.
Because I have a question. It's not so much I think this way, but I wonder if this could be what we're hearing. And it worries me a little bit.
Okay.
This has to do with the Philadelphia Eagles and some things we've been hearing. Now, yesterday, we played some cuts, one from Nick Sirianni and one from Nakobe Dean, about how the Eagles' young linebacker has had a good stretch in camp.
Oh, yeah.
And it's starting to sound like he's coming into his own. And yesterday we talked about how that would be huge for the Eagles, huge for Nakobe Dean. He's at a turning point in his professional career, at least in this city. He was a high pedigree player coming out, even if he did fall in the draft, and he has not lived up to those expectations. But that was a focus on one player. The linebacker room, I should say, is one that we still consider I guess, weak compared to their peers around the NFL, the great teams that you look at defenses and
Yeah.
they're like, I trust that unit a lot more. That's not saying too much. I don't think I'm being unfair doing that.
You're not stepping out of bounds.
But again today, we're hearing more about positive things that have to deal with the linebackers, and it's not just Nakobe Dean. And I wonder where these things are coming from. Is it a place of fact? Is it a place of just reaction to what you're seeing with your eyes? Or is it creating a narrative that we want to happen? And I trust where it comes from.
Well, one thing is that there's a lot of our local media here that covers the Eagles that has this opinion. I have a piece that I retweeted this morning from my buddy Jeff Kerr with CBS Sports about Nakobe Dean and about his approach. And if I know one thing, and it's dealing with the guys like, Jeff McLane or Kerr or DeCecco on our show, we'll talk to him on Thursday, is that I don't think any of these guys write with the agenda of, man, let me be a fan of the Eagles.
No, but we do have the worry, and Andrew's voiced this a couple times, of when Howie Roseman talks a guy up and Nick Sirianni talks a guy up, and they create this type of narrative. It's not so much that reporters necessarily believe something that's not factual, but when you start saying things about a certain player, you have to talk about that in stories. You have to voice your opinion on those, and sometimes that can create a narrative in and of itself. We've seen Howie Roseman do this before. So Barrett Brooks, who these quotes are from, these cuts that we're about to play, I fully trust that he knows what he's talking about. He does great work for NBC Sports Philly. I'm not trying to insinuate that he's just lying to us about what's going on with the linebackers, but I wonder how much of it is us wanting to believe the linebackers are going to be good versus how much of it is actual faith that they will be good.
Okay.
Here is the first thing we're going to hear. Barrett Brooks talked about praising Nakobe Dean, and similar to what we heard from Nick Sirianni yesterday on what he's been doing in camp lately.
I tell you what, everybody's talking about their size. You can't judge the heart in the dog. They may not look like the biggest guys, but I tell you, they are the modern-day linebacker that fits in what teams are trying to do right now. You want fast, quick guys that can cover, guys that go out there, they can blitz. They've done it all. And say what you want to say, Nakobe Dean has gradually got back into the guy we saw in Georgia. He's a phenomenal player, man, and he's getting back to that, that same type of style that we saw from him, which allowed him to draft him. I love the way he blitzes. Everybody say he lacks as far as his pass coverage, but hey, you learn that once you start learning what it is to be an NFL linebacker. I like what he's done.
That's Barrett Brooks on the best show ever yesterday, by the way, with Tyrone Johnson, Ricky Metallico, Silvana Keller, and he's got great praise, not just for Nakobe Dean and that, but Devin White calls them modern linebackers and fits into what you look for those guys to be.
Here's the only thing is that it's really bold. And again, Barrett knows what the hell he's talking about. But having watched Nakobe at Georgia up close and personal, I don't know how you're telling me that we see the Nakobe Dean we saw at Georgia in either a preseason game or a practice.
Oh, but Johnny, it gets bolder.
Bolder than that?
Listen to what Barrett Brooks also had to say about Devin White going even further than he did in that first cut.
Okay.
Devin White is a special player, and I think that he's really going to be that special player this Eagles defense needs. We don't have – we were like, all right, well, he just got ousted in Tampa Bay. He didn't have a great year as he had years past. Because he has some stuff going on with. I'll tell you what, he's back focused and ready to play this game. I love him coming out of college. I'm going to love him even more on playing on this prove-it deal because he wants to get paid. Money will come to him. But I think the biggest thing is the respect factor. Everybody lost a little respect for him. He's going to make sure everybody in the NFL knows White and that you remember who he was, and he's even better right now. So he'll probably be my guy to be the spark plug for this defense. He's going to be one of the best players on this defense, and watch how he conducts himself this year. I say he's going to the Pro Bowl already. You can mark it down. He's going to be that great in this defense simply because he wants everybody to remember that he is one of the better linebackers in the NFL.
Oh, my gosh.
Now do you see why I wonder how fair this question is?
All right, again. Having consumed Barrett's his content for a few years, I think he tends to be much more right than wrong.
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
But I swear to you, this is to me, crazily positive. Like, this is like over-the-top positive for what I would expect from Barrett.
If somebody told me this at the bar, if a guy walked up to me and was like, hey, here's what I think about the Eagles season.
Pencil him in for the Pro Bowl right now.
We had this. We had a caller who was a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan call in and tell us he's a Hall of Famer. And we laughed that dude off the air. And now that's a caller.
I'll still laugh Hall of Famer off the air.
Yes. But Pro Bowler, from a guy like Barrett Brooks, who we respect and trust his opinion, now I'm questioning if I know what I'm looking at with this linebacking room.
That's really bold. And Barrett left no room for error on that one.
So I want to hear what people think. Does that get you fired up? Does it make you question why these things are being said? Are we trying to create this faith in a linebacking room that doesn't have the talent that we need? Like, what do you make of that? You can let us know, 610-632-0975. We'll check in on the text line next. You can also call in on the phone line. A lot of interesting conversation going on. We're going to pick the fan base's brain coming up next. I'm Connor Thomas sitting in for Andrew Salciunas. John Kincade to my left, Brendan Gunn on the board. We're back after this for more Kincade and Salciunas on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Mike Missanelli.
Studios. I'm Connor Thomas sitting in for Andrew Salciunas. Let me remind you what we have coming up. A busy show today, and
It's about to get really busy.
it really is. So coming up at 8:10, well, let's do 8:05 first. Let me give my man some respect. 8:05, today's headlines with Brendan Gunn.
Let's see how good they are before we do that. Oh,
Absolutely.
the screen's just blinked.
7:48, the screens blink.
Haley will get us.
8:10, we're going to talk to Jeff McLane, Inquirer.com, as we always do on Tuesdays. Just because his guy, Andrew Salciunas, is not sitting in the seat doesn't mean Jeff McLane is not a great man and will still join us today.
And I'm asking Jeff McLane today about the Phillies story.
Ooh,
About the ownership. Could he see Jeffrey Lurie doing this?
that's an interesting...
And so I want to see from a guy like Jeff who's covered, teams. Just take it. Look, everything becomes about the Eagles, right?
Absolutely.
So it works out there.
Then coming up at 9, we're going to talk to Jeff Francoeur about this Phillies-Braves series, the overall view of the National League.
He's doing
where
the game
Phillies are
tonight
at.
nationally on TBS, but we'll be watching the locals.
Absolutely. And at 9:40, we're going to hear from Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore. So it's going to fly by the back half of the show. Don't touch that dial. We've got a lot of great stuff to get into, but we've been having fun conversation throughout the show today, and I'm sure there is a lot of reaction to the conversation about luck, the conversation about the linebackers, the conversation about the Eagles' offense carrying the defense. What in the world is John Middleton saying about the Phillies, and does the fan base agree with him? Because it sounds like a lot of people do. This is going to be a heavy reaction-creating show, I believe, and it's more just we have interesting storylines to react to. So, Brendan, what do we have on the text line?
We'll start with the Birds. We got Scott in Florida checking in. He says, I believe the Eagles' offense will be the side of the ball that gets the most attention, seeing as we all know they can be productive on a week-to-week basis, a la 2022. This year's defense will be what I'm personally paying most attention to in terms of their potential. We have the combination of free agents and a draft class and Fangio's scheme. I anticipate nothing less than a top 15 defense.
Okay. I'm going to tell you right now, I'd sign in blood for top 14, like a little bit more than that. Just a little bit more than that, and I'm going to feel really good.
Maybe not blood. Can we do red ink?
We can.
I just say it's blood?
We can.
Okay.
I've given a lot of blood lately, so I'd sort of
not
to
for nothing.
do
You
that.
do have to hope for that if you have Super Bowl aspirations.
Well, again, and the Chiefs were middle of the pack 2022 and beat the Eagles in the
16th.
Super Bowl. But
that's on the low end in the past 15 years.
But they were much better down the stretch.
Yeah.
And that's what I think this Eagles defense is going to do.
Here's how I think I would break it down. I think the Eagles' offensive side of the ball is going to be the number one determinant of whether or not they're a good football team.
Okay.
I think the defensive side of the ball is going to be the number one determinant of if they're a great football team.
Okay. I think that's very, very logical.
Offense being great will get them to the baseline of what we believe this team could be. If the defense is good, well, then we're cooking with gas, Johnny. And then we're talking about what you said with Bourbon Street early on in this season. Man, you said early.
Yeah, I
do. Bye week we're talking about it?
By the bye week, if the defense is actually a force where it's helping them to win those early games, yep, book the reservations. I already have them in the Final Four. I have already scheduled January 26th doing a pregame show.
Love it.
So
I got nothing going on.
You and Andrew and Bill are busy already. So, and I'm telling you right now, I will feel that great about it.
Love it. All right, Brendan, what else do we have on
We'll switch it up to the Fightin' Phils. We got Sam checking in on that early conversation. He goes, Rob has been a great 162-game manager, and he has a great approach. But when you are in a slump, you can't talk about 162. When it's mid-August, you can't think that way because those games are so much more important. The indifferent approach is why the slump has lasted 5 weeks. It may be why they couldn't pull out of the World Series or the NLCS last year.
I think that is very, very... no lies detected that could be, and he says, that could be why that happened.
I heard Kevin Cooney talking about this last night on Philly Sports Tonight. I was driving around Fishtown, had it on. He was saying how there's 40 games left, and this is August, and you're in a race for the top seed in the National League, and that's why these games matter. And then he said something interesting. He said, we're talking about the big picture. This is the big picture. This is the time where that matters. And I could not disagree more.
Okay, what do you disagree with what he's saying?
Now, where we're at right now with the Philadelphia Phillies season is significantly more important than June.
Okay.
Or May. But it is still not the end game. And I think we are getting caught up with getting close to the end of the regular season. I think as we feel the postseason drawing closer, we're kind of jumping the gun. And I wonder if it's part of this team has been locked into being a postseason team for like 3 months now. Like, we've known for a while that the Philadelphia Phillies are going to be in the postseason because of how hot they started the season.
Yes.
Because of Atlanta's shortcomings and injuries and everything like that. Because of what's going on in the division outside of the Phillies and Braves. Like, this team's going to be in the postseason. That's basically a guarantee at this point.
Okay.
And I wonder if because of that, we've been urging this team. Like, we want to feel like we're closer to these being big games, just because before this bad stretch, there was so much baseball was like, just get us to the postseason. Like, we know what this team is in the regular season.
You know what's funny is that I find myself many, many times disagreeing with Kevin. And then it's one of those things like you brought up. I think that many, many times I sort of end up at the same place as Kevin, but the rationalization about how you get there is different.
Right.
It's how different people think. But to me, I understand what he's saying. I mean, it's really, like, this is really, it's important time.
It is.
It's important time.
I'm not trying to say it's not important.
And he tends to be a Rob Thompson defender.
Yeah.
And I don't say apologist, but defender. But I think that's very logical, what he said.
And a lot of people agree with it. And I'm not trying to say it's not an important time, but I don't know that it's. I do think some people in this fan base are treating this like life and death right now, and it's not.
Okay.
It's quality of life. And while that is important, and that would be the seeding in the postseason,
sure,
it's not everything. So I like to keep the proper expectations, even if things are important, and I'm trying to temper those. But I know I'm more positive, so I'm not saying I'm guaranteed to be right. These are just my opinions. Coming up next, we're going to hear the opinions of Jeff McLane at 8:10. Inquirer.com on what's going on with the Philadelphia Eagles. And also, apparently, Johnny's going to ask him about the Phillies, which will be very interesting for that crossover question. We're also going to have today's headlines at 8:05 and a lot more still to come. I'm Connor Thomas, sitting in for Andrew Salciunas. This is Kincade Salciunas. We're back after this here on 97.5 The Fanatic. Salciunas. But just like Mr. Salciunas does every morning at 8 a.m., I want to wish everybody a safe drive into work. Hope you have a wonderful Tuesday morning commute.
It's going to be an awesome day.
They're going to have a great interview to listen to coming up with Jeff McLane at 8:10. So
good.
While you're in the car, go ahead and focus on the road, and then focus on Jeff McLane at 8:10. Today's headlines at 8:05. A busy day on Kincade Salciunas so far, and it's only getting busier. It's supposed to be a beautiful day outside, Johnny?
It's supposed to be spectacular.
Love that.
Like 76 degrees and sunny. Too cold for you,
Too cold for me.
It is going to be absolutely amazing.
Love that.
Can't wait. It is, I already said, Phillies on the deck tonight. So got the TV outside on the deck, enjoying it. Nikki Foles will love that.
Hey, man, it's a big series. You got to bring out the big guns for it, and the deck TV is certainly a way to do it. The Phillies down in Atlanta taking on the Braves for 3 games. Now, Atlanta will be without Austin Riley in this series.
He's out for the rest of the regular season.
And
minimum.
That just I wonder how much they're thinking down there. We can ask, because we're going to talk to Jeff Francoeur coming up at 9 a.m. We can ask how much they're worried about making the postseason in general.
Well, I mean, they're a game and a half up on a postseason berth right now on the Mets.
Yeah.
Mets are a game and a half back of the final. When you imagine, just think about losing Wheeler, Harper, because Acuna for them. You lost Wheeler. And if the Phillies lose Wheeler and Harper, they're not a postseason team.
But
Phillies aren't making the postseason. And then lose Wheeler, Harper, then your second baseman.
Stott,
then lose
Bohm.
You're
a big time reliever.
They have been rampaged by injuries. But they lost arguably their 3 best players in losing Acuna, Riley, and Strider.
Yeah, and
the Phillies, if they lost 2 of those guys, would not be a postseason team.
I want to be totally clear before I say what I'm about to say. As a true fan of the game of baseball, and as a fan of a lot of those players in a vacuum, it sucks to see guys get hurt.
It's terrible.
It sucks to see guys unavailable, because the most interesting version of the game of baseball is when the stars are out there playing and you get to see the best against the best.
It's absolutely true.
What I will say is it's pretty good for the Phillies that they went through this bad stretch, and then Atlanta still has to deal with all of that, keeping them at bay.
It's amazing what I've never seen a team as snake bit with injuries. Big names like they've had this year.
It's insane, and it's a really good thing for the Philadelphia Phillies. I'm not,
next
not rooting for it or
7
anything,
of the next 13.
Yeah. You need them.
Yeah, you
do. Now it becomes even more important that you have a great series down there in Atlanta and take
2 out of 3.
That's what I was just going to say.
I would love 2 out of 3.
That's got to be the expectation.
And again, though, we set the floor at 4-2 for the homestand, I set the floor at 1-2.
See, you're right.
Because it just bleeds out 3 more games off the clock to winning the division.
You're right that's what they need.
But I want the top seed.
But at this point, with so many people out, the Braves are not the Braves.
No, the Braves are not the Braves.
You're going to see the name on the jersey. It does not represent the quality of this team that you're going to play against. You should win 2 out of 3 in the next 3 games down there in Atlanta.
You should.
All right. Well, we're in agreement on a lot of stuff today, Johnny.
Nola pitches well against them, too. So you got Wheeler, Nola, Sanchez. You got it set up.
It's not to like.
Got it set up.
Speaking of what's not to like about today's headlines? It's 8:05, so time to turn it over to Brendan Gunn.
Today's headlines with Connor Thomas
and Brendan Gunn.
Exactly.
What's up, Bren?
We're all golfers here. Some better than others. All less better than me. But
I disagree with you. I think you're inched ahead of me right now the way I've been playing.
I think we'd all like to play golf with Tiger Woods, right? Given the opportunity.
Yeah.
I think we'd like to do that.
I would love it. It would be one of the bucket list things I would absolutely love.
Well, it just so happens that Jeff Francoeur, who's going to be joining this show in the 9 o'clock hour, he was asked about his opportunity to play with Tiger Woods, and he had a funny story. It was on the podcast, Is This a Great Game or What?, by our friend Tim Kirchin, who also joins the show, and our buddy down the hall, Jeff Kirchin. It's a little bit longer than we usually play in headlines, but I'll let Jeff Francoeur tell the story.
I've been lucky enough. I've met President Bush, President Obama. I was not nearly as starstruck as I was when I met Tiger Woods for the first time. But what the coolest Bobby Cox story is, guys, is Bobby during spring training loved us to play golf, loved this. We were playing the Yankees at 1 o'clock on a day game, and I was 22 years old. I had been playing for 3 months as a starter. I was not going to go up to Bobby and be like, hey, I need the day off, right? But he comes out to stretch and goes, Smoltzy said you had a chance to play with Tiger today. There was a 150 tee time. And I'm like, Bobby, I'm fine. Like, I'm playing today. He goes, no, I'll make you a deal. He said, after your first at bat today, run through first base and kind of rub your ankle a little bit like you hurt your ankle. And he's like, in 2 days, we're going to Bradenton. And you know, Tim, you have to have 3 starters make a road trip.
Sure.
And he's like, I hate Bradenton's infield. I don't want to get any of the guys hurt. So if you go to Bradenton, I'll let you go play with Tiger today. So sure enough, man, we're playing the Yankees, 13,000 people in Orlando. I ground out the first at bat. I run through first and I start rubbing my ankle. And, Bobby, he waddles out there with his cleats. And he checks on me. I run inside. I literally throw my golf clothes on. I didn't shower. I get to the golf course, and they're on the first fairway. So I hit my tee shot. We end up playing 27 holes. And about 4:30, my wife sends me a little thing that there was an update that said Francoeur day-to-day with a high ankle sprain.
If I had known that story, and by the way, I was down there, during spring training. And then if I had known that story, I would have killed Francoeur for it. I would have killed Francoeur for it.
But no, how awesome is that? How
That's
awesome
a great
is that
story.
by Bobby Cox? How great is that Frenchie played along and
It's a
did the
great
fake
story.
ankle rub?
Great story.
And how much does that make you question when you see something like a tweak of oh, this guy's wrist's bothering him or his ankle's bothering him? I'm going to assume everyone's playing golf with Tiger now.
And I'm not kidding you. Bobby Cox used to he said he loved his players bringing their golf clubs. He let them bring golf clubs on road trips. He thought that was good for bonding and for mental clarity.
Yeah, they played Marion a ton. I mean, pitching staff.
They played a
always.
ton. Yes, they did.
But since we got Jeff McLane coming on next, I figured we go back to the Birds and get us a replay from what you guys started the show with a little bit, asking about this offense and defense and the dichotomy between them both on the Eagles.
Yeah, but I also want to open up this conversation on the Eagles because, John, you had an interesting question about the balance between the offense and the defense and whether or not we're expecting the offense to have to carry the defensive side of the ball.
And I think there's a little bit of a misconception when you ask that question. I think people think the Eagles are going to have to win by a shootout if the offense is carrying the defense. That's not necessarily true. I mean, last year or 2 years ago, the Chiefs did that. Their defense was 16, but last year their overall defense was ranked second. Would anybody say they were scared of that Chiefs defense necessarily? Not that they fear it in the way they fear that offense, right? I think if the Eagles can get out to an early lead, let's say 14 points, then your defense is going to be ranked higher because the line's going to be able to pin their ears back and go out and get sacks, stuff like that. Take a look at the 49ers game from last year. If the Eagles go out there and execute those touchdowns instead of field goals in that opening quarter, then the defense is able to pin their ears back, remain getting after Brock Purdy, and that game maybe goes differently.
Yeah.
So I think that's the better answer to the question is, yeah, they're going to have to carry him, but Eagles aren't going to have to win 42-39 every game.
Okay.
That's a great point. And I do think people, and John, you brought up a bunch of times the average score per game from the Eagles offense and where you want to see that.
I think they're going to be I do believe it'll be a 28-point offense this year.
Yeah.
That's a lot, by the way.
And I think
that always usually puts you in the top 4.
I think that's a fair expectation. We're very close to the same page on that one, if not on the same exact one. But it's a good point that Brendan brings up about the dynamic of a game where if you can get those points early, maybe it's more important than the scoring average of the Eagles, the first quarter scoring average of the Eagles, the getting out to early leads, the ability to put their defense in a spot where they don't feel like their backs are against the wall, and that's on the offense. And you know what I just opened up the door to? That old conversation about deferring the opening kickoff and
don't even get me
Eagles
started
take the
on
ball.
that.
I know
That was another one of mine yesterday, by the way.
Yeah.
Deferring does not increase. It is not. It is honestly, it's almost exactly a coin flip.
Yeah.
Whether the team that gets the opening kickoff or doesn't wins the game, it is another one of those myths that people believe, deferring really helps you.
It's also one of those inevitable conversations that comes up in every single football season, so I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point. But I know we're going to talk about some great stuff now because joining us live on the Comcast Business Hotline, Jeff McLane of the Philadelphia Inquirer, Inquirer.com. Jeff, appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning. How have things been going following the second preseason game for the Eagles? And now you get into that period where the big focus is on roster cutdowns and position battles.
Yeah, and also the starting units, because they're not going to be playing in the last preseason game, and they haven't played at all in the preseason. Well, at least most of them, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, they're really working on that side. I'm really pushing those guys because they're not going to have the opportunity this Saturday to play, and they got to get them ready for an opener in Brazil that isn't that far away. So that's part of the process as well. But certainly as we get a little later here in the week and with the preseason game on Saturday, that'll be the guys in the third and the fourth teams really trying to make their case that they can make the team.
Jeff, the dog's excited about it. I love that. I mean,
yeah, we could have a little dog barking in the background.
We are excited about that. I love it. We're all barking too because we have asked the question many, many times as we've seen training camp unfold whether the positivity is a little almost too much for this fan base because there's been so many great young stories coming out of this. Young players sort of stepping up. If you were to rank the best young stories coming out of camp, can you give us your top three?
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of times they're the focus of camp. But sometimes for me, I emphasize that because it's the first chance we get to see some of these young guys, and we have to go not only just to the rookies, but maybe the last few classes because you haven't had guys play a lot. Nolan Smith didn't play a lot as a rookie last year, and he was a first rounder. Keely Ringo, we're starting to see a little more of. He was drafted last year. And then this year, of course, Quinyon Mitchell. We're starting to see a little more of Cooper DeJean. The Mitchell's the one who's impressed me the most. If you want to ask me to give you some names, I would start him on the outside. And I think they have answers at nickel with Avonte Maddox. But they think that their best combination could be, Quinyon in the nickel. I mean, he could be the guy in base, and then he moves inside nickel, and then you have Isaiah Rodgers on the outside. And that gives your best combination. But Mitchell has impressed. He's the real deal. That's a tough position to play. I'm sure when he gets out there, he'll miss some plays, he'll make some mistakes, and everyone will kind of be like, but that's just the cornerback spot in the NFL, today's NFL. But he's the real deal. And obviously there's a lot for him to have to still do. There's plenty of football left for him to play, but he certainly can play at this level.
Now, Jeff, one of our conversations today on the show, one of our big questions is, are you looking at this Eagles team as a situation where the offense is going to need to carry the defense? We had that narrative about last year's team. Obviously, it didn't work out because of the stagnancy of the offense. But when you look at this roster, do you say the offense is going to have to drag the defense to where they need to be? Or do you see the defense as more of a complementary unit?
Well, they're both equally important. I mean, you're going to have teams that the strength is typically one side of the ball, and the Eagles have built the offense to be that side of the ball. Not that they haven't invested in the defense, and this offseason we saw them do that. But, if you look at the skill positions, the quarterback, obviously all the amount of money that they've invested up front in the offensive line, they want to score points, and in today's NFL, it does favor the offense. You should be leaning kind of in that direction. So they just, I don't think they need just a defense to be competent, certainly better than it was a year ago. But, yeah, they need, if they're scoring points, they just need to kind of give the offense, 3 and outs every now and then. If they turn the ball over, they need to be able to stop them, whether it be in the red zone or somewhere else in the field. And you're definitely giving yourself a little bit of a better chance, I think, with getting Vic Fangio in here versus what they previously had. And I wrote about that the other day. And that's what they're thinking because, defensively, there's going to be 6 new starters. I think that's kind of drifting a little bit under the radar. There's some of those faces are not entirely new. They're younger and they're stepping up into those roles. But 6 new starters, and arguably your top 2 guys on the defensive side of the ball last year are no longer on the team, and Hassan Reddick and Fletcher Cox. So, it's not just a foregone conclusion that the defense will be better than last year based upon talent. I think the Vic Fangio addition, though, certainly will help in that regard.
Jeff, is there anything to watch for this Saturday? It's the 3rd preseason game, and you see how things are approached. But with these new coordinators, things could potentially be different. Any real critical, roster spot up for grabs that's going to be a blood fight on Saturday afternoon?
Well, I still think there's, positional battles that are still kind of up for grabs in terms of, lower on the depth chart. So, right, 3rd receiver, although I'm not really sure that I still think that the 3rd receiver isn't on this roster. And then, again, I know a 3rd receiver could be a second running back or a second tight end. I get all that. The Eagles are going to spread the ball around. The second quarterback position, and I think Kenny kind of like a little bit separated himself the other day. And look, that's not something the Eagles even have to tell us who won that job. It's one of those things, a break glass in case of emergency. But that still theoretically is a job that still has to be figured out here. And I think that third preseason game could help maybe Tanner McKee's cause. And then there's like you said, there are a bunch of roster jobs up for grabs, and the sixth edge, the fifth cornerback. Is it Eli Ricks or is it Josh Jobe? Those types of jobs, which aren't necessarily super important. Fans tend to kind of because there isn't much else going on, we'll kind of fixate on that, and so certainly the media as well, as we get down and making our roster selections and who we think will make it and who we won't. But ultimately, those guys, they could factor in at some point, and a lot of times over the course of the season with all the injuries, and maybe they do. But for the most part, they don't.
We're speaking to Jeff McLane of the Inquirer, Inquirer.com on the Comcast Business Hotline. Now, Jeff, we've heard some glowing reviews about the linebacker core recently, including Nick Sirianni talking about Nakobe Dean, like a minute and a half long answer, as most of his answers are, but just gushing about how Nakobe Dean's been playing well. But earlier in camp, we heard Vic Fangio give us a little bit more of a Vic Fangio type response, where he said that Dean had a rough day in the open practice and there had been some questions about some of the things he's been doing in his camp. What's your assessment of what Dean has done so far and where he's at in a really pivotal year for him?
Well, I think if you read my practice observations, there's a little bit of a plug there, but I've kind of been, I think, pretty fair on Nakobe has performed throughout this camp, and really, honestly, aside from that open practice, I don't think he's performed poorly at all. And in fact, I know everyone's catching on now, but I was saying weeks ago that Nakobe's doing his job, and he's out there playing aggressively, which again, I have to take that a little bit with a grain of salt. Like, he's willing to kind of push the envelope a little bit in practice, and maybe that makes him stand out a little more. These aren't real life settings, but that being said, he's been solid in both of the preseason games, and in the joint practice, I thought he performed well as well against the Patriots. Nakobe is a third-round pick. They had him starting. He entered last season as the starting Mike, right? So it's not like they didn't think he could do this a year ago. Now, Devin White and Zach Bond's come on here, and I think Jeremiah Trotter's still kind of in the mix, at least in terms of playing time. And then the question is whether Vic is comfortable rotating there, which we've seen a lot of teams do at the inside linebacker position increasingly over time. Jim Schwartz was really kind of the first guy to start doing it here. And Vic has said that, he'd prefer not to. He'd prefer to have two established guys in there. But he said he's done it the other way as well. And I wouldn't rule out as well that, even if Bond and Devin White are the starting inside linebackers, there's a reason to get Nakobe in there. But number one, he's always been good against the run. I don't think anyone disputed how he performed against the run last year. He's shown if the blitz is going to be a big part of this defense, and I'm not sure I'm entirely buying that, but Nakobe can rush the passer. And look, and he can play in space, but I think that is where a little more of his issue is, and that's what we saw in the open practice, is that in the open space and moving side to side is a little bit more of a struggle for him, and he's not the biggest guy, but again, Nakobe has played well this camp, and this is a guy that certainly is in the conversation, but I don't know if it's enough for him to earn the starting spot, but I still feel there's going to be some role for him on this defense.
Jeff, John Middleton, the Phillies owner, sort of came out and was a little bit what it could be perceived as critical of his manager in the midst of the last 2 months' struggles. Could you ever imagine Jeffrey Lurie doing that in the course of a season?
No. Well, Jeffrey doesn't talk anymore during the season,
right?
Unless it's under rare occasions. Typically, we only really get him once at the owners' meetings. Maybe if the Eagles make a playoff run or push to get to the Super Bowl, you'll see Jeffrey, and maybe sometimes he'll kind of say something to a few reporters here and there. But no, that's just not Jeffrey's role. That's just not who Jeffrey is, right? And love it or leave it. That's just I understand that. Especially over the course of the season, you've hired your coach to do a certain job, and you're going to let him do it. Now he can make a move at some point. The Eagles start slow. That would speak volumes about how he feels about Nick Sirianni, right? No, that's typically not how Jeffrey handles his business.
All right, Jeff. Well, you handle your business very well every time
Jeff.
we speak to you. Appreciate it. We will talk to you again next week as we draw even closer to the start of the regular season for the Birds.
All right, Greg. Guys, talk to you soon.
Thank you, buddy.
So, yeah, Jeff McLane of the Inquirer, Inquirer.com on the Comcast Business Hotline.
You're
And
dying
Johnny,
to hang up.
What do you mean?
Like at the end of that, you barely.
that was a clean one.
He barely got out a goodbye.
That was a clean hang up.
Just give yourself
Yesterday was not my best.
Give yourself like a 2-second thing, and
we're running out of minutes. I got to check our phone plan. No, I appreciate Jeff taking the time to join us. Great stuff as always. We'll react on the other side to what he had to say. A lot of interesting things, and that ownership question. Well, an interesting change in perspective based on what a great owner of Jeffrey Lurie might do in the same type of spot. So we'll get into that coming up. Reset we've been getting into, and also put into perspective this ownership theme to the show that we've been having. I'm Connor Thomas, sitting in for Andrew Salciunas, John Kincade to my left, Brennan Gunn on the board. We're back after this here on Kincade Salciunas, 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
8:31 the time here at Fanatic Studios. Connor Thomas sitting in for Andrew Salciunas. He is back tomorrow. John Kincade is always to my left, Brennan Gunn on the board. And we just had a great conversation with Jeff McLane of the Philadelphia Inquirer on what's going on with the Eagles. A lot of interesting stuff in there. And you know what? We talked about the positivity yesterday and how training camp has gone smoothly. Like, even Jeff McLane.
I think Jeff sounds like he's got a little hop in his step.
It feels easy. Everything surrounding the Philadelphia Eagles right now feels easy.
I think there are professionals in charge.
I agree.
There are adults in the room. When you've got two coordinators that could be head coaches, one who's already been one, and it just has been very smooth.
So that's the base level.
Yes.
That's the bottom layer of the cake. But then you start to build on all of the extra fixins. And
do you put fixins on a cake?
No, I don't think so. But I couldn't really come up with the other word, so I just went with it.
Yeah,
the other layers, the other tiers.
The other layers, tiers of a
Let's
cake.
go with that.
Tiers, not tears of a clown, tiers of a cake.
Tiers.
There you go.
But that leads into the conversation. The other questions that we were asking. So he did bring up, when we asked about our question, offense, defense, is the Eagles' offense going to be expected to basically drag the Eagles' defense to success this year?
Sure.
And Jeff brought up the, I think, really right way to look at it. It just has to be a unit that, on the defensive side of the ball, forces a 3-and-out every once in a while, creates a turnover here and there. Offense has been the calling card, or become the calling card of a lot of teams around the NFL, which was a question we asked earlier. Is that the norm now? And it seems to be that that's the thought process of Jeff McLane, the thought process of the Eagles. And if you can get a middle-of-the-road defense, a mediocre defense.
I need better than mediocre.
Okay. What does mediocre mean to you?
To me, I need a defense. If you're going to be in the middle of the pack, I need you to have an exceptional skill set. So maybe you are top 7 or 8 in turnovers.
Gotcha. Or sacks.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be sacks. I don't think this team is going to be top 10 in sacks.
But that would be something that would fit that bill. But I need you to have a skill set. I need
you have to be dominant against the run.
Okay.
Or dominant against the pass, whatever it is. You have to have some exceptional skill set, but overall, you can be, look, Vic Fangio's history would tell you he usually comes in around 12th. So there you go. He'll have top 5, and then he'll have like 18. He'll have so you're going to look around 12. And I'd be fine with that.
I'm fine with that as well, and that makes me feel better about our conversation,
sure.
The offense and defense and those units, how they're going to interact with each other as far as carrying the weight of the Philadelphia Eagles' expectations. Now, I'm interested, too, on your thoughts on the answer Jeff McLane gave us on Nakobe Dean, because you know Nakobe Dean as well as anybody in this market. When it comes to people who do this job,
sure.
You've seen him for years. What's your takeaway on what Jeff McLane had to say compared to what Barrett Brooks had to say earlier when he was lauding Nakobe Dean for having a great stretch of camp?
I'm more with Jeff McLane.
Okay.
And I am a huge fan of Nakobe Dean, and I don't want to make it seem like I'm trashing him. I just think after the first 2 years, I'm going to need to see a hell of a lot more than training camp and practice. And hearing what I respect the hell out of Barrett Brooks and his thought process, and I love when people go bold like that. He's bold. Pencil him in. He's going to be a guy you can count on. He has Devin White penciled into the Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, Barrett's really, really high on what he's seen. I need to see it in real game action, and I also need to see, take me to the bye week. Take me to the first 4 weeks. And if Nakobe Dean is a starting player and is a hugely contributing player, and again, like Jeff points out, I never question Nakobe Dean against the run. Coverage, I've seen him be picked on, and I think he can be picked on. He was even picked on at times in college. But that defense covered.
Right.
We'll see.
This is a little bit different.
I expect a much different version of Nakobe Dean this year, but I just thought I'm closer to Jeff McLane's evaluation than Barrett Brooks, and I've seen less of him than either one of those gentlemen.
And we'll have to keep an eye, and everybody should, on Jeff McLane's articles from training camp practices that you can find on theinquirer.com that he was plugging in that interview. Great insights in those into how players are doing on individual days. Now, you talked about defense has to be able to cover. Your eyes lit up with something. he was talking about who was going to play outside corner for this team. And when Jeff McLane gave his answer and talked about Keely Ringo, what are you thinking, Johnny? Because you had a reaction that was just very clear.
Well, to me, Keely Ringo, from everything I've read, and again, a guy that I've watched since he came out of high school, I don't know. When he's so high on Keely, I'm high on him being one of your top 3. And if you're talking about if you're going to put Quinyon Mitchell in there, then he's just one of your top 4. But that allows you to be very, very versatile. I think Keely Ringo can play the outside.
I think
really
so too.
But I really would love to hear that Quinyon Mitchell's going to have the chance.
That's where I stand.
And that's where
right?
I know Brendan Gunn will be excited to see something like that.
Absolutely. I mean, when I hear that, I'm like, okay, well, I want your first-round pick, the guy that you evaluated higher than any other defensive back coming out of this year's draft class. Like, that guy's got to be an outside corner at some point. It doesn't have to be this year.
Doesn't have to be this year.
But
I'd love to hear, and it sounds like Jeff McLane thinks he can be there now.
Yeah.
And you've read other things that sound like they think he can be there now. If that's true, they could have really hit a home run with this draft pick.
That is the hope. Now, speaking of listing home runs alongside the Philadelphia Eagles, you had a great crossover question about how Jeffrey Lurie, I think your premise was confirmed by Jeff McLane. That Jeffrey Lurie would not.
He laughed. He laughed when he answered it.
Yeah.
That he just said, said flat out, could you see Jeffrey Lurie doing what John Middleton did when he talked to Todd Zalecki? And he laughed and he goes, no. That Jeffrey Lurie would never do that to his coach. And I think last year we saw it. If there was ever an opportunity for Jeffrey Lurie to spout off, it would have been after that lousy Cardinals game on New Year's Eve that absolutely ruined my New Year's Eve. That game stunk.
Yeah.
I got out of the press box, my first game back to the press box, my first game back to be able to cover a game. And I swear the stink was on me till January 3rd, witnessing that Jonathan Gannon and the Cardinals coming in here and just running it down their throats. If there was ever a time that Jeffrey Lurie may have taken a page out of John Middleton's book to sort of voice his displeasure about how the team was doing things, it would have been then.
And that is an interesting difference between these two owners.
Correct.
And each of them are exceptional owners in their own right.
Yes.
But this is why I stand where I do on the John Middleton conversation, where an article came out. If you were not listening earlier, Todd Zalecki of MLB.com put out an article talking about John Middleton's thoughts. And there are numerous quotes from the Phillies owner in there talking about how the stretch that the Phillies went through of losing and may still be in has bothered them. You need to be pushing people to rethink what they're doing, including players and coaches. And to me, that screams owner who is a fan of the team. And I don't think that that is a bad thing at all.
Well, I think fan base wants to know that their owner is.
Yes.
You brought up Michael Rubin earlier, Brendan. I don't think anybody in their right mind believes Michael Rubin is a diehard Sixers fan, even though he owns the team. They just because how do you spread your allegiances around?
Exactly.
Josh Harris.
Josh Harris. Excuse me. How do you do that? Michael Rubin's a whole nother level.
But even Michael Rubin, those guys, and I'm not knocking him for it, but it's very obvious that they're not bleeding Sixers blue.
No, Michael Rubin wants to hang out with the quarterback at the lunch table.
Little baby.
He wants to hang out, yeah.
But if you win, you win. So that's all
James
good.
Harden's best friend, little baby. I would just say to you that I think everybody wants their owner to be a big fan.
Yes.
But you don't want them to maybe act like the fan on Twitter or whatever.
Exactly. But my other point would be that's fine for an owner, especially in baseball when there's so many owners who refuse to give their teams the tools they need to succeed, mainly monetarily. But it would be a terrible character trait for a manager. And that is kind of what you heard John Middleton talk about or read John Middleton talk about. That mentality of a fan, I don't think it carries over to management of a baseball team very well because the emotion that comes along with being a Philadelphia Phillies fan or being a fan of any team Well, it can mess with your rationality a
Oh,
little
it can.
bit. So that's part of the premise as well. Do you want the owner, when it comes to the decisions around a team, to act like a fan? Sometimes I think the answer is yes. Sometimes I think the answer is no, especially with the way this fan base can be and the reactionary nature of us in this city. 610-632-0975 is the phone number. I'd love for you to answer that question, along with chiming in on the other things that we have been going on throughout the show on. We're going to get into the text line coming up next to see what the people are saying. A lot of stuff still to come here on Kincade Salciunas, 97.5 The Fanatic. The time here at Fanatic Studios. Connor Thomas sitting in for Andrew Salciunas here. Salciunas back tomorrow morning. John Kincade to my left, Brendan Gunn on the board. And we've had a fun, busy show. It's only getting busier. Coming up at 9 even, Jeff Francoeur is going to join us. He's on the call for the national broadcast of tonight's Phillies-Braves game. We're going to dive deeper into that series coming up in the 9 o'clock hour. Also in the 9 o'clock hour at 9:40 a.m., the scheduled time. We know how Eagles do with press conferences. But Kellen Moore is scheduled to meet with the media, so we will carry that press conference live. And we talked to Jeff McLane at the Inquirer earlier this hour. That full interview is already posted on our YouTube page and podcast on our website if you want to go back and check that out. One thing we haven't talked about yet today that I want to mention real quick before we check out the text line, FanFest. If you don't have your tickets,
yes,
you got an opportunity Friday. We have a ticket raid coming up August 23rd. 8 a.m. September 28th, the date for FanFest down at Xfinity Live. It's us with FanDuel. You can get your tickets during our next online ticket raid, 8 a.m., Friday, August 23rd. Go to 975thefanatic.com. They're going to be gone quick, so make sure you're ready at 8 a.m. You want tickets to the biggest party of the year for Philly sports fans. All the Fanatic hosts, celebrity guests, Philly sports legends, activities, games, and prizes. 975thefanatic.com has all the info, so go ahead and check it out. Now, we've been bouncing around between basically Eagles, Phillies, back and forth throughout the day with the ownership conversation, what John Middleton had to say about our baseball team, rather his baseball team, our shared baseball team.
Yeah, well, he considers us, as he says, he considers there to be a obligation.
Absolutely.
That he's a caretaker for something that belongs to the whole city.
And that's why that's why I'll never question him as an owner and what he tries to do for that franchise. And then we've also had the conversation with the Eagles, continued one about where they're at right now heading into, getting ready to head into the regular season and what the balance between the offense and defense is going to be. So, Brendan, what do we have on the text line from our friends today?
Yeah, we got Joe the Cynic checking in on the Phils in Middleton. He says, I love Middleton's comments. Clearly, they're directed at Thompson, and I'm sure paying Harper a ton and watching him on the bench in the ninth inning after a horrible skid infuriated him as much as it did us fans.
I think it did.
That's a great
I think
point.
it absolutely did. That's what that stuff is. He gave those quotes before that event.
Yes.
Okay, so just to make that clear, it wasn't in reaction to. But I guarantee you, after everything you read, he's speaking directly to the man who makes these decisions. You can't be passive. You have to rethink the way you do things. You have to consider different options. He speaks directly to the manager. And he doesn't appreciate how he's doing things. And I would say it again. If you don't think that other people around the team have maybe gotten in his ear about it, you're out of your mind. But this owner's very in touch with his players, very in touch with that locker room, and I guarantee you he's heard that from somebody.
Right. I do think it's short-sighted, though, to consider the comments that John Middleton made in that article from Todd Zalecki on MLB.com. You can go ahead and check that out there. We've read some excerpts. I don't think it's fair to consider that as just like a shot across the bow of Rob Thompson's boat. Like, I do think there's more to it than just the manager.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
But there's no debate whether or not the thought process of how the manager handles this team was on John Middleton's mind when he said those things. The question is, do you agree with what he's saying?
There is not a CEO in this country in any walk of life that would look at the owner, that would look at the guy that they hire as CEO and would say, yeah, so these last 2 months, let's make it a business year. This last year in business has been a little bit of a disaster. Well, we're just going to keep doing things the way we do it. It's a long year, and we're just going to... No owner is taking that explanation. None.
Well,
None.
You're right. I understand what you're saying, but there was another interesting part of the conversation that we got into where it's how does luck factor when you get deeper in? And I know we have some text on that as well, Brandon. What do we got?
We do. We got Blaze and Ambler checking in on that. He says, luck happens when preparation meets preparedness.
Ding, ding.
Luck is when the ball bounces your way in 50-50 situations. All championship teams have a level of luck, but you can't rely on luck to get there.
Absolutely correct.
Love it. Love that explanation.
Yes. Now, I would argue, Johnny, that I think you need to come over a little bit more to the side of luck mattering. Like, I don't think you give luck enough credit for the role that it plays, but I am 100% going to acknowledge that if you don't have the baseline talent needed and the approach and a lot of things that you do well yourself, the luck cannot be everything. Like, it's crazy to say, well, it only matters who gets lucky. But I think it's equally as crazy to say that it's just, well, you put yourself in the right spot, things will take care of itself. There is an element of randomness to it.
There is. You have people, though, who say, you're so lucky to have the job you have. And I'm like, yeah, I worked 3 jobs 16 years of my career.
Yeah.
Was I lucky when I could have gone out and partied on a Saturday and I was working late on a second or third job?
Right.
No.
But on the other hand,
that's not luck.
Yeah, but B. Gunn pulled one of those call this phone number tabs off of a thing on a telephone pole, and he's here too. So
that is correct.
It can happen multiple ways.
Look at us. Correct.
Look at you now. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Jeff Francoeur, who again is on the call of tonight's game on the national broadcast. Frenchie's going to talk to us about the Phillies matchup with the Braves. I'm going to ask him about the luck question. We're going to talk to him about the ownership question as well. A lot of stuff to get into coming up, and maybe even a little bit of a Tiger Woods mention for that story from earlier. A lot still to come here on Kincade Salciunas, 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
A big series down in Atlanta. I'm Brendan Gunn.
Connor Thomas sitting in for Andrew Salciunas today. John Kincade to my left, Brennan Gunn on the board. I hope everybody had a safe drive into work. We've got a wonderful interview for you right now.
Well, let's hear the interview first. I mean, he's a guy who sort of owes me his broadcasting career because I picked him out of obscurity as a young stud in Major League Baseball and brought him onto the Buck and Kincade show every week. And little did I know, I should have had an annuity on this thing, that Jeff Francoeur, who Philly fans love Jeff from his tenure here, now he's a star with TBS and Fox. And he joins us on the Comcast Business Hotline, where every day in business is a big day. Jeff, those residuals do come in at some point for me, right?
They do. They should be coming your way. I sent them out a couple weeks ago. So
I'll check the mail.
Just keep checking the mail every day, and you should be good.
How are you, brother?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well, stronger every day, getting healthier all the time, and appreciate you making time for us today. And we said it earlier today. I can't imagine if the Phillies lost Wheeler, Schwarber, and Harper. If they'd had a chance. And this Braves team that we open up a series with tonight in Atlanta, I mean, they've been as snake bit as any team I can ever remember.
Yes, but you see different teams go through this every year. And I argued with someone the other day about this and this was before, obviously, even Austin Riley got hurt.
Sure.
I just told him, I said, look, I think if this team makes the playoffs, like the fact that you got in it and you kept grinding away all year, I mean, just put the Braves on paper right now and put the Phillies on paper right now. The Phillies are a better baseball team. They're healthy. They got all their stars. And you know what? So they love their chances going into the postseason. The Braves, on the other hand, they're falling apart right now. But to still continue to grind it out, I think it says something about the SNIT and the coaching staff and those players that they're going to keep playing and try to backdoor their way in this thing.
Now, Jeff, looking at the Phillies and the stretch that they went on where it was just unbelievably bad baseball compared to how they started the season, what's your evaluation of what this team is right now? Do you believe their ceiling is still the team that they were when they were the best team in baseball by a mile? Or do you have more concerns about their viability when it comes to October?
No, I've told this week in and week out to everybody, it's the most complete baseball team I've seen all year. And, I've done all these different Tuesday night games everywhere. Look, you're going to go through a little fun. I don't ever remember a team just absolutely cruising and dominating for 162 games. I think the season's too long. Guys won't admit it on the team. I can say it on here. I think at times guys are like, all right, let's get this thing over with so we can get to October, which everybody wants. And so, look, they're going to be just fine. I think the only thing for me would be, some of those players' bats go cold at the wrong time. But the thing that's good for the Phillies is they have so many guys up and down that lineup that, even if a couple of them do, you feel like you have the depth to overcome it. So, I know people are panicking a little bit. I saw the other day where, I've told you I love Rob Thompson, and he took, a lot of grief for not bringing Harper, not bringing Real Muto in. But I'll tell you this, man, I remember reading Joe Torre's book one time, and he said there were days that fans would just crush me for not bringing in Mariano Rivera. Maybe I'd give him a second day off. And he said they never knew I was getting him ready for October. And look, Philly's going to win the division. And so I think Rob Thompson is making sure his bullets are ready come October.
Does Rob Thompson remind you a lot of your beloved manager, Bobby Cox?
Absolutely, man.
Tell us how. Take us behind the curtain.
Because you know what, man? Like, yes, Rob gets frustrated, okay? He's going to get frustrated Bryce Harper at times, this and that, but you never see it. He might go in his office like Bobby used to. We used to laugh because you'd walk in Bobby's, Bobby would close the door after the game and just start cussing, and then he'd come out 2 seconds later. All right, boys, let's get him tomorrow. Get a good meal, He just never let you see that side. And I've always said it. I think that's what Rob Thompson's done a good job is from day one when he came in. I've asked all those guys. He's been the same manager. And I'm telling you, man, when we talked to him game one of the NLCS last year when he was riding high after sweeping the Braves, or before going into Game 7 of the NLCS when, let's be honest, it was very tense up there. he was the same with us, and that resonates with players. Players don't like managers that are on edge, man.
Now, Jeff, I want to ask you about something. I'm not sure if you've come across this article, but Todd Zalecki, who covers the Phillies for MLB.com, brought up a conversation with John Middleton, the Phillies owner that he had. And there was a lot of interesting stuff in there, from John Middleton questioning the teams, like needing to potentially change the way they're approaching things when they were in the middle of that bad stretch. But something that was also interesting, because I think we already covered how you feel about the ceiling of this Phillies team. He brought up a conversation between John Middleton and former Phillies GM Pat Gillick, where Gillick talks about how much luck is involved in success, especially in October for baseball teams. Can you just talk about the luck that it takes to find your way to winning a World Series?
For sure. I mean, look, you can go look at all these teams the last few years and how they were, snuck in the playoffs, how they were able to. I mean, think about Texas last year, man. This was a team that, had to travel all over the place. They got in. Arizona last year, they happened to get Philly those last two games when Bryce and Trey Turner went quiet. They hadn't been quiet all postseason, and they were quiet the last two games when it counted, and they were able to have that full bullpen. So you got to get healthy. You got to get lucky. There's no doubt. But, look, I think one thing it's tough for owners to understand, and I've had this argument with Braves ownership, talking to them for 162 games, man, is a long season. It's too long. I've said it for years. I think it should be cut down some. But I think these guys, you have to give them some grace, that there's going to be some times where you just get in some lulls, especially August, man. You've been battling all year. And, I think of the Phillies, if you had a healthy Strider, if you had a healthy Riley, I think if you had a healthy Acuna, it'd be a lot different story as far as them knowing the Braves could be on their heels. Without the firepower, they're sitting there looking at a 7-game lead, unless it goes completely sideways. I think now what Philly needs to be talking about, and I would hope those guys, knowing JT Realmuto, knowing them, they're sitting in that thing, we need to get the best record. We want home field advantage, so everybody has to come through Philly in October. And I think that kind of needs to be their goal. And I would think coming down to Atlanta for these 3 games, you would like to think with those guys that will get them refocused.
Jeff, I got to say, though, I look at that home field advantage, and you have told me, we've had conversations on air and off, about how amazing that stadium is, how bedlam at the bank, and all that, great advantages in October. But the last 2 years, we've seen this team get no hit, up 2-1 in the World Series at home, and then the bats go lame again in Game 5. And then last year, come home for Game 6 and Game 7, and totally have no juice to them. Does the home field really matter as much as we make it out to be?
I do think it does. I mean, at the end of the day, look, you're not going to win every home game. It's baseball. And there are times when you face a guy on the other side, I don't care how loud your crowd is, if he's throwing well, there's not a whole lot you can do. So, but I do think over the long term, I think it makes a huge difference. And I think it makes a difference to the players. And again, doesn't mean you're going to get the job done every time. I told you, I still blame last year with that Phillies, not even so much Game 6 and Game 7, but it was Game 4 that they let slip away with Wheeler on the mound coming back for Game 5. That was your knockout punch in Game 4. It ball back to Philly. Like when we came back to Philly, and I told you, I think I went on Game 6 before with y'all, and I said, like, they're playing with house's money, Arizona. Just to get back to Philly, they're like, wow, they were excited. So, but I can tell you this, if I'm Philly, I'd much rather only have to fly out to L.A. one time, only have to fly out to wherever they're going and be able to stay home, because I do think it makes a difference.
Now, Jeff, what's the mentality? We're speaking with Jeff Francoeur, who's going to be on the call for tonight's game between the Phillies and the Braves for TBS.
And he's going to be totally unbiased.
Absolutely.
He played for both teams.
He's going to have to be. If not, we'll have to have him back on and question everything. But what's your feeling going to be if you go into this with the Phillies' perspective? Because we've talked about, well, they only really need to win one down there in Atlanta to kind of keep themselves at bay in the division. You've already said during this interview that Philly's winning the division. But when you look at that, is that a dangerous mentality for a team to say, well, we just need to do this to survive? Or do you think the Phillies are coming into town saying, this is a reeling Braves team, injuries up and down the lineup, we got to win this series or look for a sweep or something like that.
I can tell you this, knowing, I've told you this, I've played golf with a lot of those guys on the Phillies, with Stott and JT and Trey Turner, knowing those guys, and of course Bryce, and their attitude and the way they play the game, you would hope, right, that they're coming in with that attitude, not just, hey, we just need to sneak one out and we're good. I would be very disappointed if that was the case. I think it'd be disappointing in a lot of teams. And so that's why I said I think because of the way Rob Thompson manages, and he's not screaming at these guys, it's not like, hey, pick it up. I think, there's probably a thing where they flew down last night and it was like, all right, guys, we got to get going here. This is a great time to start. We're going to Atlanta, a team that's won the division 6 years in a row. And let's be honest, if they came in here and swept, that's pretty much the knockout punch, right? And so you would think that's how they would go about it. But, look, at the same time, I'll never forget, man, when Ronald Acuna went down and different guys go down and how people step up. And look at the Brewers, dude. Christian Yelich goes down. They just beat the Dodgers 2 in a row and then swept the Guardians at home. I mean, people can draw from different things. And, the Braves, I think, for them getting Lopez back tonight is a huge lift. Because on the other side, right, I'm telling you, I've talked to so many guys in Atlanta that they're taking the mentality of what the Phillies did last year with Wheeler and Nola and Suarez, and like, hey, if we can backdoor our way in the playoffs, nobody wants to see Chris Sale game 1. I can promise you that.
No.
And if Lopez can get back to throwing the way he is, I know Max Fried has not pitched great, but, you still will take him in a game 3 on the mound in the playoffs. So I think that's the mentality that the Braves are trying to go, and that's where, to me, again, like if you're the Phillies, you want to make sure you get that number 1 seed, and you just force people to come to you.
Tell me a little bit about Pure Athlete, because it's something that I refer to all the time. Your podcast is really, really interesting, and the amount of people that you get to guest on it is great. And we have a lot of youth sports parents that are in the listening audience today. And why did you choose this to be your sort of platform and forum?
Well, you know me, man. I got 4 kids, my wife Katie and I, and I'm coaching 2 softball teams, a baseball team, a lacrosse team right now. She actually, we did the sketch, and she's like, you might have overcommitted just a tad, and I'm like, yeah, maybe. But I'll be honest with you, I'm so passionate because I learned so many life lessons for me in youth sports that even if I didn't, I look at my sister and, I look at my brother, and they played sports coming up, and I feel like that's made them successful in the business world, in education, and teaching. My sister, is a principal down here at Whitfield Academy,
Yep.
And by playing sports, it made such a huge difference. So our big thing is we want kids to understand that, look, there's a small amount that's going on to play college, go on to play pro. Now, I'm not saying don't dream big, man. Go get it. If you want to go do it, go do it. But also have the realization that it's setting you up for something later in life and better. And it was really good. This week we have an episode dropping where we have Matt Holliday and his wife on, and talking about Jackson, and a lot of people might not know, but their other son coming up, Ethan, is probably going to be, if not the first 2 or 3 picks in the draft this next year. And just how, when he got sent down, how they came beside him and stuff. So it's just a really, I think, good thing for parents and coaches to go to, that hear from tons of athletes that have got to the highest level, but different ways. Some people, I always tell people this, Misty May Trainer went to Long Beach State to play soccer. She won 3 Olympic gold medals in volleyball. So there's so many different ways that you can get it. We had a good one, John, that you need to go back to. Rowdy Gaines, the great swimmer. Sure. We had him on, and he did a great job in the Olympics, man. I love listening to him break down the swimming during the Olympics. But he didn't start swimming until he was 17 because he got cut from football, baseball, and basketball when he was 14, 15, 16. And he said, I came home and my dad said, well, all you got's left is swimming, son, or there's no sports. And and he goes on to be one of the great all-time swimmers. So, I think just an outlet for people to have. We love questions and different stuff that they send in that, we can try to answer for them and give kids the best experience they can playing sports, and give parents the best experience to take that journey with them.
Now, Jeff, last thing for me here, because I realized a couple days ago that maybe the best experience is when you skip a sports game, because a story came out from a podcast that we're very familiar with here. Is a great game or what with Tim Kirkjian and his son, Jeff Kirkjian, who works in the building with us.
Jeff's
here.
in the next studio over from us.
Yeah, right down the hallway. And you told a great story about Bobby Cox telling you to fake an ankle injury or a tweak to go play golf with Tiger Woods. And now I got to tell you, as great as the story is, one, I'm a little bit jealous you used it there and didn't save it for this interview. But now when guys tweak something in spring training, I'm going to assume they're on the links with Tiger Woods. Like, is that, like, how crazy is that? And can you just tell us not just what that experience was like, but that moment that your manager would allow you to do that at the point you were in your career?
That's the incredible thing, guys. I was 22 years old, and, I'm like, Bobby, no. And that's why he's so great. He understood the dynamic. I love Bobby because in spring training, he was always like, dude, the first 2 weeks is for all the AA guys in camp. Like, I want to get them out, get them experience playing in a big stadium, doing this, watching you guys practice, hit BP. So I'll never forget that day when Bobby came up to me. We were literally stretching in the outfield, and he says, why didn't you tell me you could have played with Tiger today? And I had played with him one time before that. So I think if I'd never played with him before, it might have been a little different. But I played with him one time, and I'm like, no, Bobby. And he's like, look, I need two outfielders to go to Bradenton with me on Thursday. He's like, today's Tuesday. He said, first at bat, run through the base, kind of roll your ankle a little bit, as you're sitting there. I'll come out, we'll get you in, we'll get you out to the course. And I'm like, deal, man. I ain't turning this down. So sure enough, man, he comes waddling out there, Bobby, with his cleats on. He sits there and he kind of grabs me by the shoulder. The trainer points to my ankle. So I kind of walk in, and then, dude, the moment I hit where nobody could see me, I sprinted up the stairs or the thing in Orlando.
Wide World of Sports.
Wide World Sports. You know how that little walkway there, railway, I think I jumped one of them to get in the locker room. I literally get in my car. It's about 15 minutes. I remember I was trying to get there so fast. And I get there, tee off. They're out in the one fairway. We played 27 holes that day. And my wife, I think we were engaged at that time. She texted me, and at like 4 it came out, Francoeur day-to-day with a high ankle sprain. So then the great thing was I ended up getting the next day off because they acted like I was just doing rehab on my right ankle. And then Thursday morning I'm on the bus at 8 a.m. to Bradenton and played. But it was
how much would I have ripped you for this if I had known?
Oh, big time, 100%.
It would have let off the show, right?
You know what? But you would have done the same thing. Any kid,
everybody would have.
I
would
have done the same thing, and that's why Bobby's the best. And that's why I tell you, when I get to talk to Rob Thompson, I think that's why I like him so much, because he reminds me of Bobby. He knows how hard the game is, man. We sit in there and we hear him say, hey, guys, just got to keep grinding. And I know fans get frustrated sometimes, talk show people, but to players, guys, I'm telling you, when you get into the nuts and bolts of it, and you get into the playoffs, that's why you're willing to run through a brick wall for your manager. And so that was the best thing with Bobby, man. And I'll say this to finish. The cool thing talking to Rob Thompson last time I saw him was, remember when the Phillies were in town last time and Bobby got out to the field, man. Like, you want to talk about hair standing up when he stood up. And I remember all those talking to JT Romito, those Phillies guys that were there. They were all like, man, we took a moment, stood up and clapped because you appreciate what he's done for the game.
Jeff, love you, buddy, and I appreciate you making time for us today.
Anytime, man. You know it.
Take care, man. See you, buddy.
Thanks, Jeff. Jeff Francoeur there on the Comcast Business Hotline. He'll be on the call tonight for TBS of Phillies Braves.
And to hear him talk, by the way, he left being the lead Braves analyst this year.
Yeah.
He retired because his 4 children, he wants to be able to coach their teams. And he said, a job like that takes the whole season is going to be something that'll be there for him when those kids go to college.
Right. So,
and to me, he's a special guy, and he loves, and he talks me off the ledge anytime I have issues with the Phillies. He's a guy that I will text. He talks me off the ledge. He thinks the Phillies are as good as it gets.
Interesting, huh?
So there you go.
How that works? Where the level of luck that's involved and how this is still the most complete baseball team that you see.
He is all over this team, and he believes in them big time.
And also a good amount of belief in the manager there.
Oh, he's totally a fan.
So we'll have to discuss that coming up on the other side. We're also going to go to Kellen Moore's press conference at 9:40 a.m. to hear what he has to say about the Eagles offense. We're going to get some more reaction on the text line. Plenty still to come here. It's Kincade Salciunas, 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
A big series.
9:31 a.m. time here on Fanatics Studios, at Fanatics Studios, I should say. Connor Thomas sitting in for Andrew Salciunas, who will be back tomorrow. We are going to hand things over to the Mike Missanelli Show at the top of the hour, but still to come. 9:40. We're going to be focused on Kellen Moore's press conference. Eagles offensive coordinator is scheduled to meet with the media coming up at 9:40. We will carry that live for you here on the airwaves. So hopefully in about 8 minutes, but we know how the Eagles work timing-wise.
You never know. You never know.
Somewhere between the next 8 to 12, 14 minutes or something like that. Kellen Moore will be live on these airwaves. We'll get to hear what he has to say. The offense we've been talking about today for the Philadelphia Eagles and where they stand compared to the defense, how much of the load they're going to have to carry for this team this year, and not that we get to ask Kellen Moore the question specifically from here, but it'll be interesting to hear where he's at mentally with the offensive side of the ball, knowing that he's not going to see his starters in any actual game action until they get down to Brazil for week 1 against the Packers.
They got to be feeling pretty good, though, about just how everything has gone.
Well, they better be. Otherwise,
yeah.
They have no reason why they didn't play the starters.
And it didn't really seem like Jeff McLane had anything to tell us about, like big position battles and everything for the final preseason game and everything. I guess I'm just going to watch it as hold my breath again.
Yeah.
And I'm going to probably end up watching a half. I'll watch a half before church.
All right, that works.
I may watch a half before church.
Just make sure you're tuned in before the game because we have the Fanatic Birds pregame show.
Oh, well, yeah, of course I'll listen to all of that.
Yeah.
And thanks to Ron Davis, Liv's going down to the game. But
that's awesome.
I'll probably come in from the pool, have it on DVR, watch around half, and then go to church.
Actually, you know what? I'll be watching.
Pray for good health.
I'll be watching the whole game because it's Eagles Vikings, and I got the family beef over that.
Do.
So preseason or not, I want to see my mom and brother very upset with
you
their
do.
football
I like
team.
that too.
Wow.
By the way, shout out to Father Riley, our new pastor.
Yeah,
dude, he's to the point, brisk, real easy Saturday afternoon mass. Digging Father Riley early on.
Listen, man, I understand the importance of mass, but I've never read anywhere why it can't be quick.
I'm praying for good health. That's my number one thing. And Christina will say, I don't think you're supposed to pray for the Eagles or pray for the Phillies.
Why not? You're not supposed to pray for the Eagles.
And I said, I don't pray for them to win. I pray for them to say, everybody good health.
Yeah, you need the Minnesota Vikings to keep all their bad health on that side of the sideline. Keep that away.
Exactly.
Yes, get out of here.
But that'll be interesting coming up, and we'll hear what Kellen Moore has to say at 9:40. I want to check in on some of the reaction to the topics that we've been having throughout the day, talking about the Phillies and their owner coming out and having some interesting things to say, and John Middleton, as well as what we were just discussing with the Eagles offense and the level of carrying they're going to have to do, not of the football, but of the team compared to the defense. So, Brendan, what do we have on the text line?
Yeah, we got Anthony and St. Pete checking in on that article, of course, and the Pat Gillett kind of Luck conversation that was going on. He's on John's side with it. If Luck has so much to do with it, Middleton should have never spent $250 million on payroll. You pay that much, the talent and coaching should separate themselves from most teams. 10% luck, 90% talent and coaching.
Here's the thing.
Luck is just so random.
We can't do that, though. We can't do if luck plays into it, why'd you pay all that money? Like, yeah, dude, you can give yourself a better shot by getting better players. Talent is the more important part of it. I'm a pretty lucky guy. I am. I win, like, raffles every once in a while. I just generally have good luck. But if you put me on the mound in a World Series game, luck is not going to be enough to help me to win it. You need to have a baseline of talent, and you need to acquire as much talent as you possibly and reasonably can, and that's why the money was spent. But to say that that's not a reason that, luck, that's a reason luck doesn't play a factor into it, and I know he said 10%, but he's underselling. I'm not giving a percentage, but he's underselling how much luck does play in spite of the payroll, I think.
Then we got an Eagles text, if you want to get into that real quick before the press conference.
For sure.
We got Eddie and Delco checking in. He says, with all the young talent, is there a world where this defense is worse than last season? We're all expecting it to be on the better side.
Well, no, they're not going to be worse than 30th. I honestly, I just got my hair back, and it's back in its full glory. I'll shave it off if the Eagles are the 31st or 32nd team in defense.
Is this a bet, or would that be out of frustration?
It's just a guess. That is a gift. I'll go, if they're the 31st or 30th, if they're worse than last year, I will absolutely shave this beautiful mane of hair off that I
Literally,
love
cut
so
that
much.
in the back right now.
Mine will fall out. We are both going to be You're not going to be able to tell me, John, or Bill
not
Colarulo apart if the Eagles' defense is 30th or below this year.
By the way, Colarulo looking sharp, I got to say.
The bald look? Yeah.
There's some people, though, you don't know. I was shocked when Bill shaved his head. Sometimes you look and guys will have like egg heads or bumpy heads, and it doesn't look good. Colarulo's pulling it off.
Nah, he rocks it, man. He definitely does. My thoughts on that text there. No, there can't possibly be.
They cannot be worse.
I'm trying to think of any scenario where they would be. And there are parts of the defense you could argue could take a step back.
That line, man. That defensive line could maybe not get pressure on the outside.
No, that part of the game could take a step back.
Sure, but do we know
not
many
the
things?
complete defense?
If you're not getting pressure, then your young corners are bound to get lost out there sometimes. The linebackers are not going to look as good if the defensive line's not looking as good by design.
Yeah, but let's remember how many things went wrong last year. The further we get away, the more we think of the season as like a combination of a bunch of things, more than like all of the. Everything that went into that was crazy last year with the defense. The defensive backs couldn't talk to each other. They had no idea where they were supposed to be. The linebackers flat out stunk. Like, the edge rushers couldn't get home. The defensive tackles, because they're younger players, and Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, they hit walls. Like, there were so many things that went wrong to make that defense what they were. And on top of that, the offense didn't hold up enough of their end of the bargain to give the defense any reprieve. There is no way.
There's no way.
No way.
There's not. They're going to be one of the two worst defenses in the NFL? Never.
Not a chance.
Never.
Even with the youth. Not a chance.
I would say no, but that linebacker group is very, very thin. It's thin.
The two worst teams in football? Never. Never. 30th.
Not a shot.
Guess what? They weren't 30th. They finished 30th statistically last year. They weren't.
I don't think they're going to get there. But
no, they're not even going to get. They're not even going to sniff it.
You sound worried, Brandon. Do you want to talk about it?
You do.
I'm just worried about the defense a little tiny bit. I think we're all kind of just anointing them that they're going to be.
They're not anointing them to say that they're not going to be 31st or 32nd.
Okay, fair. But we're talking about this team as a Super Bowl contender, and I don't know if this team's defense is good enough to win a Super Bowl. There's a lot of question marks on this team. And, yeah, we were just talking about maybe there's a PR push right now with the linebackers. Devin White sure as hell looks like he could be that. But Nakobe Dean, he needs to stay healthy for a full season. Zach Ball needs to go out there and play their freaking position for once.
We have all these concerns, but that was not the question.
He does sound very scared.
Yeah, but that wasn't
very
the question.
I just think people are a little bit too comfortable with this defense right now when we haven't seen it. Like, okay. I can't say this team's going to go out there and be a 1 seed without seeing this defense come out and look better.
Yeah, I think the only guy we've heard say that this is like an extremely talented defense has been Adam Schefter. Now, I will say that Adam Schefter's word around the NFL carries some weight. We'll talk to him tomorrow at 8 a.m., so we'll get a chance to pick his brain on all things going on NFL. But I don't know, man. I don't want to overstate what the defense is, but I also don't want to understate it and say they're going to be what last year's was. Last year was an anomaly on both sides of the ball. And that's totally going to change.
The past 15 Super Bowl winners, they average out to be around the 8th best defense in the NFL. I don't know if the Eagles can get there. Now, 2 out of the last 3.
I don't think they can either, but when I saw that the Chiefs did it at 15 or 16.
They did it at 16, and then the year after, the year before, it was the Rams won it, the 15th best overall defense. I don't know if you.
No, you can.
That's the
shows you that you can.
That's like the highest ceiling I see for them. So they have to perform to their peak to get in the middle of the pack.
I could tell you that ceiling.
Top 10 to 15.
Ceiling.
I can't see them cracking.
No,
top 10.
I think ceiling for them is like 11, 12. Floor for them is like 17, 18.
I would
that's right where they need to be.
Yeah, I'd put the ceiling up to 10.
Okay,
maybe I just
right
like
there.
a good round
You're right
number.
there, though. Yes.
Floor. Yeah. Floor 20.
Yeah, how many things have to go right for them to be 10? That's what I mean. Like, is that good enough to win a Super Bowl? Everything has to go right.
We're learning something about sports today, folks, and I think people need to come to this conclusion. Whether you have a talented team, a smart coach, a great owner, a huge payroll, a lot of things have to go right in every sport.
Sure.
And some of them are outside of your control, and some of them are in your control. But at the end of the day, when we're going to have that conversation about, well, they have to have a lot of things go their way. Every team that wins has a lot of things go their way. Whether you're talented, you're lucky, whatever you want to call it, to get to the peak of the mountaintop, things have to go your way. And if you have Super Bowl aspirations, World Series aspirations, NBA Finals aspirations, Stanley Cup final aspirations, you're going to need to assume that things will go your way to reach that point. All right, let's go live now to Kellen Moore.
All right, good morning.
Kellen, Vic said the other day that it's been on Saturday in terms of the blitzes that he was sending at you. How do you think Jalen and the offense handled those, especially the zero blitz stuff?
Yeah. That's the beauty of training camp is you get different types of installs throughout the whole month, and we got some great work the last few days just from pressure standpoint. Vic, obviously, in his installation process is going through that, and so it's great stuff. It's great stuff because it requires all 11 to be on the same page, all 11 communicating, taking care of business. It's excellent for Jalen, for our whole group.
How does that sort of connection work with you and Vic? Are there ever times, Vic said there was no consideration to the offense when he was installing that stuff. You guys ever consider each other? Like, I got to work on this, or Vic's got to work on that?
Every once in a while, we'll have a couple of situations in practice where maybe we do want to get something specific for the other side of the football, but they got enough volume on defense. I think we have enough volume on offense that over the course of training camp, you're going to get exposed to a lot of different types of football, and so that's the beauty of it. I don't think we miss a whole lot, and if there's a couple things that maybe Vic wants to theme up, we can give him something in particular for a particular period.
Aside from that, how much of a resource has he been for you?
Yeah, Vic's been awesome. It's always fun to have conversations with the other side of the football and see it from their perspective, their lens, see how they perceive you, because sometimes you have your own perception and it can be looked at in different viewpoints. And so it's always good to talk to those guys, Vic, the rest of the defensive staff, just a really good group of guys that you get to collaborate with.
What's come up in the offense building that maybe you didn't expect was going to happen in the OTAs?
That's a great question. I think the pressure stuff is always a fun discussion just because there's a lot of different ways to approach it. We're continuing to talk through that, and there's a lot of different tools that you got to utilize, and I think the important thing is you have to have enough tools in the toolbox to be able to handle things throughout the season. And so, I think those are all fun conversations from the standpoint of what's been in place that we can lean on, what's some stuff that we can add. We're continuing to just try and evolve and have those open conversations.
Roster decisions get made above your level, but how involved are you? It's your offense. Hey, I don't like the depth here. We need to do something else here. How involved are you in those decisions?
I mean, Howie and Nick are just awesome. They collaborate with a lot of people in this organization. I think it's an excellent process. Obviously, a lot of coaches were all a part of this process to some degree, and we got excellent leadership here. I mean, it's a really, really, really cool process.
Jeff McLane has a run game coordinator title and has done a lot here in that regard. Have you ever had someone in that kind of role before as an offensive coordinator?
Yeah, definitely. We've definitely had different structures at different places, but a lot of times the offensive line coach everywhere I've been has kind of been the lead force from a run game perspective, and it's a collective effort. Everyone's a part of the process. I think it's fun as you start getting to the game plan aspect of it, that it's a collaboration tying the run game and the pass game together so that you present things in complementary ways.
Will Jeff bring something maybe new that you hadn't kind of experienced before for someone in that type?
Oh, there's a ton. There's so much, just the angles for the offensive line. I think, I'm learning so much just from his viewpoint as far as the angles that you're creating for the offensive line in particular looks. Packaging plays in different ways that allow you to get to the best possible play you can. And so it's a really excellent process. It's been so much fun.
You mentioned that toolbox, learning what you can do with that. How do you kind of trial out new things in training camp whenever, you don't really have preseason play with some of those guys?
Yeah, just how you'd expect it. There's an element of trying different things and exposing yourself. Some things you're going to like in training camp, some things you're not going to like, some things we're going to have to adjust. And that's part of the process that you got to be willing to just kind of expose yourself to some things, and some things may not work. A lot of things will, and then you just continue to collaborate with the staff, with the players, and we just team up on those things.
What's your concern level, like a right guard, if Mackay, obviously I don't know the situation, but Mackay and Tyler Steen, like how do you evaluate the other guys who might be playing in place of them?
In general, feel good. We've obviously are going through an excellent process of giving both those guys as many reps as we can. Just in general, from an offensive line perspective. I think we got some younger guys who've gotten a ton of reps through training camp. Certainly in the preseason games, that's going to bode well for those guys. And so, I think we're in a good position.
Pre-snap diagnosis stuff. Do you have separate meeting time with Jalen and
Most of it's collaborative with the whole group, and then those guys, as the season goes, adjustments are made as far as when those conversations happen. But right now, we're really collectively meeting as much as we can.
We're kind of late here in Tampa now, obviously 2 preseason games. What have you learned about the receiver position after AJ?
Yeah, I think it's been an awesome battle for this receiver room. Obviously, AJ and Devontae have done an excellent job. I think we got a really fun group of different skill sets, and they've all been able to kind of highlight those skill sets, and it's a really fun process for the guys. Again, like we said, we like that group. It's a really fun group. They bring different pieces to this offense, and I think what we're excited about is being able to utilize these guys in all their different ways.
Do you know what those pre-snap motions and mixed placements are going to show from defenses going forward in this season, or do you think you're getting enough from the defense to see that with the unit you have, or how do you sort those things out?
Yeah, motion, some of it's just distraction pieces. It's just, eye candy, so to speak. Some of it, you're trying to grab indicators to give yourself a specific idea of what the defense may be looking for. And so there's a lot of different purposes for it. And then you just got to pick and choose when is it valuable in a game plan and when are you just doing stuff to do stuff. And so there's a balancing act between motioning and shifting and tempo and all these different things of when to use it to your advantage and when to just play ball.
When it comes to a developmental quarterback like Tanner at this stage of his career, he played the position. When do you make that decision that, hey, maybe I want to see him a little bit more with the leaders? How do you handle it?
Yeah, I think every quarterback, first of all, we got an excellent quarterback room here. It's been so much fun with these guys. Even for Kenny, this is Kenny's 3rd year. Everyone's on that development path. Jalen's learning and growing. Every single guy is learning and growing in this process. And so we're trying to play guys in a lot of different situations, try and get them situations, whether it be a 2-minute, a red zone period. Hey, maybe Kenny's gotten some. Let's make sure Tanner gets exposed to some of these situations as well. And it's just been a really fun process. I think these guys have handled this thing really, really well. They're doing an excellent job. We feel really fortunate to have these guys.
Can you tell us about Trevor Keegan that maybe we don't pick up watching practice or even preseason games?
I think just steady, and you kind of lose track of him in a good way. That he's just assignment sound. He plays. He's played 1 million snaps in practice and in the preseason. He's played a high volume, and to play that consistent with that much volume, with all the things that you're learning and growing as a rookie, he's done an excellent job.
That he feels like you're helping make Jalen a smarter player, having him make more checks, more reads. How much have you seen him grow in that area since you started working with him?
Jalen's just had an excellent camp. He's got great command of this offense, great utilization of tools when he wants to, and communication with the offense line, with the receivers. I just think it's been an awesome process. Excellent. I think Tanner just does an excellent job processing the game, making quick, decisive decisions. Obviously he can make some excellent throws. He's done a nice job.
What are the main indicators you look for to know a quarterback has command of your offense?
I think just the speed of the operation, in and out of the huddle, at the line of scrimmage, is the pace of play, going at the rate that you want it to. And then obviously the decision making and how quickly he can process the game, eliminate some of his progressions, get the ball to the ideal look. Run game, they show up a lot of times because sometimes the QB's got to have some tools in the run game to get us in and out of particular plays based off the looks. And so when you tie all that together, it's an operation. Everyone sees the throwing ability, and that's certainly first and foremost, you got to be able to throw the football, but the ability to command the offense and operate it in the run game, in the pass game, in the protection game takes growing and developing, and these guys have done a really good job with it.
In terms of the passing game, how do you guys work together in terms of making sure you guys have different philosophies, how you guys get it together, make this passing game work?
Yeah. That's been this whole offseason. It's been an excellent process. Like I've said, this is a really fun process. You get to grow. You get to develop personally, as well as collectively as a whole group. And so just like the run game, we want to build on a lot of strengths that are in place. We bring things that maybe everyone has been exposed to in different places, not just myself, every coach on our offensive staff. And so it's a really good process. All right, thanks, guys.
And there we have it. Kellen Moore's press conference there. A lot of interesting stuff. I was just saying to Johnny, yeah, we could take one more question, and then there were no more questions.
Can you just hear, like I said, the adults are in charge. Could you compare that to what we heard last year from Brian Johnson and from Sean Desai?
It's just controlled. It's explained
They're under control.
well.
They have an answer. They don't hem and haw. And if you compare it to Nick Sirianni, it's really bad.
Yeah.
I mean, he's really, really good. Him and Vic Fangio, they know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly what they're saying, and they just come out with it.
Well, to use the old expression, this ain't their first rodeo. These are guys who have done this before. And let's remember, like, Nick Sirianni has been here, but he hasn't exactly had the cleanest path to success.
But he hasn't gotten better at that.
I know.
Just answering questions.
Well, that bothers you more than I think it bothers.
It's 4 years into a job.
Yeah, but...
wait, come on now. It's 4 years into the job. You shouldn't have to... It tells me, when you ask Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio a question, they just fire off an answer.
Yes.
They don't even hesitate. What does that tell you when somebody hesitates in their answer?
To me, that tells me that either they don't know what they're talking about.
Correct.
Or they process things differently.
Or they're trying to spin something.
I don't know that it's necessarily guaranteed to be that. Like, I know for a fact Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio are much better in press conferences than Nick Sirianni, but that doesn't bother me as much because, to me, I don't care how you perform in press conferences. What I do care about is Nick Sirianni has not done enough as the head football coach when it comes to the scheme and the offense and all that stuff for me to have full faith in him. But the more we talked about the chemistry of the coaching staff yesterday, it makes me feel even better every time I hear Kellen Moore or Vic Fangio get behind a microphone because I know that these guys know what they're doing, and I know that clearly they were brought in here for a very apparent reason to fix the problems from last year, and I don't really have any reason to doubt that they're going to do it.
Sounds great. I mean, it really does. It sounds great, and more importantly, the players, too, singing the praises of what they're being asked to do. It just bodes well. I get you, Brendan. I get the apprehension. But I don't believe with this kind of talented roster and those coaches in place that it's like pie in the sky that everything's going to be okay. Well, how great it'll be, that's up for grabs. But it's not going to be garbage.
We'll sure find out, won't we?
We will. Hey, support life-saving cancer research. Join us and our generous partner, Pierce Phelps Bryant Heating and Air Conditioning Contractors. Why don't you make a donation today to the American Association for Cancer Research? You can do it at 975thefanatic.com/AACR. I'm living proof 3 times over. Cancer research saves lives.
Well, if you missed that guy, Salciunas, he's going to be back tomorrow in this seat. Andy ends his vacation.
And you got to be back
on the
tomorrow.
board.
We still need you.
And Johnny will still be in the seat he's in right now. We have a lot of stuff to get into. Reaction to Phillies Braves and Adam Schefter Wednesday. A lot of stuff still to come this week, but we're handing things over to the Mike Missanelli Show. That's all for this edition of Kincade Salciunas 97.5 The Fanatic.